Professor? Ready for today's proceedings? I hope so. I should be. Even I, with nothing left to... Good morning, my dear fellows. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, you're here. Why, naturally, a true gentleman stands shoulder to shoulder with his friends in battle, at all times. Thank you, I really appreciate it. I'll see you later then. Now, Professor, we really need you to remain calm in the courtroom today. Yes, do try your hardest not to enter the witness stand uninvited again. Yes, I will. I realize it was a mistake, but My dear fellows, I must interject. Oh, you're still here, Mr. Schultz. What's the matter? Surely you've overlooked some praise, have you not? To cast in my direction, Sorry? I don't follow. Must I spell it out? I, the great Herlock Sholmes, the greatest detective of the worldwide acclamation, arose at some ungodly hour to be here now, first thing in the morning, a miracle, you must agree. Well, if I must agree, then. As you know, my sleep is quite impregnable. Iris had to employ her full gamut of tactics. She pulled the covers off, shook me, poked both cheeks, punched me, kicked me from the bed, then poured a boiling cup of her latest experimental blend on my face, and at last I was bestirred. Oh my, Iris had been busy. Iris doesn't have it in her to go that far. She's too nice. I sense the spirit of a fellow scientist, one who relishes the infinite possibilities of blending tea. I'm the one worthy of praise here, not Iris. This is my victory. Sorry to cut in. Gregson! Oh, Inspector Gregson. Good morning. Gregson, my dear fellow. Why the grim expression at this delightful early hour? Oh, I don't know. Maybe because I've been confronted with a grimmer expression, eh? Dear me, are you going to take that insult lying down, Professor? What? What? I don't know. Poor Professor. Hi, Tony. Anyway, here's the paperwork you asked for. What paperwork? Ah, I took the liberty of requesting it yesterday. I have a feeling it may prove useful. You wouldn't believe the hoops I had to jump through to get this brought out of the archives. It's the professor's autopsy report. That mass murderers? Who killed 5 members of the aristocracy? Who found guilty in a closed trial 10 years ago, and now it was all done under wraps. It was quite quickly executed soon after the trial. It's all in here. I don't know what to say. Thank you, Inspector. Yes, much obliged, Gregson. Condemned prisoner, redacted for confidentiality. Pseudonym, the professor. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. Courtney Stevens. Courtney, you say? DNF duel sucks. Oh, we been know this, bro. Yeah, we know. Us lowly lot at the yard are just doing what we can in the shadow of the great Detective Sholmes, of course. Well then, Professor Harebrain, this is it. Today we're going to lay all this to rest at last. I wish you the best of luck, Professor. I suppose he'll be in there today, will he? Drebber? Yes, we expect the prosecution to summon him as a witness. I'm still amazed that you managed to find him in just one day. I really owe you both so much. Counsel, the defendant, the trial's about to resume. Kindly make your way into the courtroom at once. Here we go, bro. It's trial time. This is it then, the final chapter. Funny, my heart's racing a little. I've not felt this before, Ashley. This strange foreboding. As if something's going to happen in this trial that I'm not ready for. But I can't let that distract me from the only thing that really matters. Finding the truth. They did say Van Sykes' apprentice is going to be in here today. Drebber is my favorite character. He's a cool character. There he is, motherfucker. In the name of Her Majesty, the Queen, I hereby declare this court to be in session again. We resume the public hearing of Albert Harebrain, here president, who stands accused of murder. Counsel for the prosecution and defense ready to proceed? Prosecution is ready, my lord. Defense is ready, my lord. As promised, Lord Van Zykes has his apprentice with him. His apprentice with memory loss. If I may, Lord Van Zykes. Yes, my lord? There appears to be someone standing at your side. Ah, yes. My apprentice and an assistant. Prosecution believes today's proceedings will see the complexity of this case rise considerably. He's got a sword and everything! I therefore instructed my assistant to attend to ensure the smooth running of the trial. The smooth running of liquid refreshments by the look of it. The way he holds himself, the way he moves, it couldn't be anyone else. But he's still suffering from amnesia, so there's really nothing we can do at the moment. I know, but oh, this is so very hard. It would appear the prosecution has done a fine job of responding to the demands of the court made yesterday. I understand you have successfully secured the engineer who disappeared from the scene. We did! Yes, my lord. I intend to call him as a witness shortly. Very good, very good. Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, who have been chosen at random to represent the will of the people in this courtroom today. Are you ready and willing to proceed? Of course, my lord. I'm sure we all understand the importance of our civic duty. I do so despise deception and deceit. I find it so very wearing. To take a man's life with a conjuring trick, it is against the magician's code, not to mention the law. Any fake scientist should feel the wrath of God, if you ask me. We have to listen to what is said on both sides, defense, and then settle on one? That's it, isn't it? Wasn't like this at my day. Wasn't like this at all. Come on. Before I do, my lord, there's a report I must read to the court. Yesterday, at the Great Exhibition Grounds, the evidence of primary importance in this case, the super high voltage instantaneous kinesis machine was installed on the experimentation stage, was deliberately destroyed in an explosion effected by an unknown person or persons. It was what? Explosion? This is an outrage. Yes, I heard this grave news yesterday. Scotland Yard submitted a report to my office in the evening. I read that the machine was blasted to smithereens and the wreckage reduced to ashes in the flames. I have a photograph here of the scene taken in the wake of the explosion. I wonder what's down there. It shows what little remains of the machine. Yeah, it's a terrible business. He did it to destroy the evidence, did he? Enoch Drebber. I will speak to you in the language you understand. Violence. Come on, Benji. Late yesterday afternoon. The protection afforded to the machine by a special dispensation for the Scientific Equipment Act was revoked. However, before a thorough investigation could begin, the invention was obliterated from existence. As such, this will become a very different trial. As it stands now with no evidence on which to draw meaningful conclusions, the authenticity of this kinesis machine will remain forever in obscurity. Indeed, a most unfortunate state of affairs. However, one thing remains clear. The victim's death was the result of the actions of the accused. Of that, we can be certain. Or it was the accused himself who was operating the machine and who ultimately caused its loss of control.
Objection!
As Lord Van Zykes rightly says, this is a very different trial now. The accused accepts responsibility for the part in the events that transpired. He acknowledges that Mr. Asman died as a result accidentally caused by a machine malfunction. However, unbeknownst to the professor, he was being deliberately deceived by a pair of very clever fraudsters. Names counsel, if you please. The engineer, Mr. Enoch Drebber, and the victim himself, Mr. Odie Asman. So what exactly were these two men up to behind the defendant's back? The defense intends to expose that information, thus establishing the unequivocal innocence of the defendant. Yeah, look at Ryunosuke go, bro. He's come so far. Thank you, counsels. Positions of the prosecution and defense have been clearly stated. Lord Van Zykes, summon your first witness, please. At once, my lord. Prosecution calls the engineer, Mr. Enoch Drebber, to the stand. State your name and occupation for the court. Name, Enoch Drebber. Occupation? Hard to pin down. I would say... Oh, shit. You got a black monocle? Yes, why do I feel as though I've seen it somewhere before? Oh, you too? I had exactly the same feeling myself. Files indicate that you are currently being investigated in connection with another case. The theft of a waxwork model, is it? A most extraordinary sounding business. But that has no bearing on this trial, I assure you. Cleave it from your mind. You're familiar with the public experiment carried out at the Great Exhibition some days ago. The accused super high voltage instantaneous kinesis demonstration. Yes, you could say that. I am aware of it. There was a terrible accident, wasn't there? It was you, Mr. Drebber, who constructed the vast machine used in the experiment. So our investigations indicate. Can you confirm your involvement? Yes, I constructed it, in precise accordance with the blueprints. Well, that's all. The court would be very interested to hear your thoughts about the machine, I'm sure. An amazing device, if you ask me. The pinnacle of modern science, making instantaneous kinesis a reality at last. What? Good. Good gracious. Do you mean to say that the experiment was bona fide? Is that your belief, sir? Yes, that is very much my belief. Such a waste that it blew up.
Objection!
We've already established the machine was nothing more than a prop for an elaborate conjuring trick.
Objection!
Conjuring trick. You established nothing of the sort. What that was shown during yesterday's proceedings is that the same outcome could have been produced by means of stage trickery. The defense merely proposed a method and demonstrated its feasibility, nothing more. But... You procrastinated long enough, I feel. Witness, you will now give your formal testimony about the machine that you constructed for the purpose of the demonstration at the Great Exhibition. Understood. Violence. Met the young professor approximately 1 year ago, though, through Mr. Asman's introduction. He provided me with the blueprints and I constructed the machine to his precise specifications. It was no trick. If the whole show was a fraud, it would have required a body double. Tell me, did the victim have a twin? All the spectators saw the birdcage appear above their heads and then crash head first into the Crystal Tower. Terrible accident, my grade. Perhaps the science on which the machine was built was flawed somehow? A body double? That goes without saying, surely. To give the impression that something has moved when in reality it hasn't. It's basic conjuring principle. The deception cannot be achieved without substituting the original with a fake at some point in the performance. But I would be right in saying you haven't managed to establish anything along those lines. Incidentally, the prosecution has already confirmed that Mr. Asman had no twin siblings. It's my understanding that this witness is well versed in conjuring artfulness. But such talents do not indicate that he was actually able to accomplish what he claims. Namely, the construction of what, by all accounts, must have been an extremely complex scientific machine. Whatever you mean. Yesterday's proceedings brought the true nature of your past exploits to light, Mr. Drebber. Indeed it did, my lord. As a swindler who preys on innocent scientists to elicit government grant money through conjuring know-how. Yes, it's true that I possess considerable knowledge of stage magic. But crucially, my scientific knowledge more than matches that of any academic in the field. Investigation of the witness's workshop attests to that claim, my lord. As evidence, the police found this Royal Society trophy for young talent in science there. Yes, that's true. We spotted it there ourselves. Now, a hypothesis is sound. It can always be forged into a physical manifestation with sufficient skill. Though I may have sold the secrets of some deceptive, whilst sniveling, talentless scientists in the past. Would you therefore assert that the explosion of the machine was an unfortunate accident? Or, of course, a deliberate act of murder carried out by misuse of science? Counsel for the defense, your cross-examination, please. Yes, my lord. Alright, what are we looking for here? Accident, I grant you perhaps the science.
Hold it!
So you understood the science, did you? Not in the slightest. Oh, right. As I've said a number of times, I'm an engineer. My job is to manufacture according to the blueprints I'm given. I would be inviting manifold problems if I foolishly allow my brain to digest the ideas behind them. I could be accused of stealing those ideas, for example. But how is it possible to construct a machine without really understanding the principle it relies on? Well, you're practicing law without really understanding the principles that it relies on, aren't you? Cheh! A very good point. Stand up for yourself, Mr. Naruhodo. The point is, the experiment resulted in instantaneous kinesis taking place. As such, the science must be sound. Hi, Jojo. Stop by and just say hi before I go out. I hope you have a good stream. Thank you, Jojo. I hope you have a good time going out. Hi and bye. He's certainly very sure of himself. What do you think, Mr. Naruhodo? Well, now that the machine has been completely destroyed by yesterday's explosion, it's going to be impossible to argue its authenticity one way or another. But if we're unable to establish that it was a piece of stage trickery rather than genuine science, we will have no grounds on which to demonstrate that Professor Harebrain's innocence. Both Mr. Asman and this man tricked the professor and used him. Took advantage of his naivety and his unbending belief in his work, and I won't let them get away with it. Seeing as the professor is an old friend of Lord Van Zyk's, what on earth must he be feeling towards Drebber? Hi and bye. Let me just press it. So you're already acquainted with Mr. Asman himself? Not really. By chance, I'd seen his name mentioned in the papers, that's all. But I had no interest in his private affairs. If he was an unscrupulous investor, it was no concern of mine. I'm pressing! As long as people pay their bills, I take out my tools and construct what they ask for. So why did Mr. Asman approach you in particular, then? Who could say? I presume because my name is associated with excellence in engineering. Not to mention excellence in fraud. Hard to gauge, but the point is, all I did was construct a machine according to the blueprints I was given. In other words, the kinesis machine was built on solid scientific principles. Yes, you might say that. Professor Harebrain certainly has a mind like no other. It's clear that you have both scientific knowledge and knowledge of conjuring magic. However, the more knowledge you have, the better equipped you are to handle whatever comes along. But your implication is that I furnished the machine with some trickery, I think. It's a possibility that we have to explore. Unfortunately, though, the machine has been blown to Kingdom Come. there's really nothing left to explore, is there? It appears that the kinesis machine was fitted with a timed explosive device of some kind. And there's nothing left of that device either, not a single shred of evidence remaining, I hear. He must have planned all this from the outset. But in any case, it's abundantly clear that the experiment couldn't have been a trick. Kingdom come! Kingdom come! Looking. What is wrong with you, Aubrey?
Hold it!
Of course, that's it! Mr. Aspen was a twin!
Objection!
Perhaps my learned friend wasn't listening earlier. Mr. Aspen had no twin siblings. No, I heard you before. But the thread of hope hadn't quite left me. The demonstration could have been a trick if there was someone who looked sufficiently like the victim. But Dr. Sid absolutely ruled out that as a possibility. It is beyond question that the victim himself, Mr. Aspen, didn't move from the stage to the Crystal Tower. The fingerprints found at the scene attest to the fact. So it can't have been orchestrated using someone who looked identical to Mr. Aspen then. What are you thinking, Mr. Naruhodo? Oh, no, nothing. Just that the idea of someone who looked identical to the victim is playing on my mind.
Hold it!
You crashed head first, you say? According to many witnesses' reports from those there at the time, yes. Were you not there at the exhibition grounds on the day? Unlikely. I rarely leave my workshop. Yeah, another one of your unique inventions was found at the scene. Well, it was the unveiling of a machine that I'd labored for many months. I saw it clearly with my own eyes, the birdcage plummeting headfirst into the tower. What a surprise. I believe the victim's neck was broken from the headlong fall, wasn't it? How would you have come by that information? Even an infernal recluse like me reads the newspaper, you know. According to the reports, 2 injuries were apparent on the victim's body. Yes, he'd been stabbed in the chest by a screwdriver believed to belong to the defendant. And he had a broken vertebra as a result of a fall from a considerable height. Yeah, I'm thinking the wax. Correct, my learned friend has been doing his research, it seems. Do we know which injury was the fatal one? Sadly not. Forensic science is not yet at that level where such things can be determined. What we do know is that the victim died having sustained both injuries at some point during the experiment. It says he was found in the birdcage with his neck broken. Obvious that he fell from a considerable height. I suppose that's hard to deny. Okay. We pressed everything. This lock does look very strong, doesn't it? Definitely no way you can remove the mask yourself if it was put on you. What a terrible way to treat someone, even a convicted criminal. I know, it's starting to make me livid, actually. Mr. Naruhodo, please. I mean, just think about it. Imagine if you had an itch on your cheek all of a sudden. You'd be utterly upset, helpless. Well, yes, that's true. But I'm not sure that warrants quite so much anger. Oh, right. Sorry. Oh! I'm a fucking idiot. If this isn't it, I give up.
Objection!
Jesus fucking Christ, Julius. We've examined the birdcage that crashed into the Crystal Towers ourselves. As you can see, the cage, which is a wooden construction, has sustained damage in one particular spot. Following the explosion, it fell some 30 feet of the glass. And I didn't even think that when we inspected the bird cage, the bird cage was broken on the bottom. And he keeps saying that it was flown head first, so the top would have been fucking broken. But following the explosion, it fell some 30 feet into the glass of the Crystal Tower. That level of damage is to be expected, surely. I agree. The damage itself is entirely understandable. What doesn't make sense is the location of that damage. All the breakages in the wood are the base of the birdcage, not the top. What are you saying? That's the opposite of where they should be. That's right, my lord. The birdcage that was at the scene is damaged at its base. So we have reports of the birdcage falling headlong into the Crystal Tower, yet the damage is at the bottom. The only way to reconcile these two facts is to accept that there were two birdcages in play that day, which were at some point switched. Switched during what wasn't a scientific experiment at all, but an elaborate piece of stage trickery. Good gracious, explain yourself, witness. Well, if we examine the facts, there's only one logical conclusion we could draw. The damage on the base of the birdcage clearly indicates that it crashed tail first into the tower.
Objection!
Multiple witness reports claims it fell head first. The birdcage materialized in the sky next to a balloon flying over the stage, following a spontaneous explosion. An altitude of some 60 feet above ground level, which is approximately 18 meters. It then proceeded to fall some 30 feet into the Crystal Tower in the ensuing deflagration. Witness reports amid such chaos are notoriously unreliable.
Objection!
But the victim's neck was broken.
Objection!
He plummeted 30 feet inside a heavy wooden cage. However, he felt it would be unsurprising to find one or two of his vertebrae crushed. A riveting scientific analysis of events from the prosecution there. Though to be even more rigorous, you would have to say it was only one vertebrae, actually. He wasn't quiet for long. I find it hard to see what's motivating Lord Van Zykes. The witness is clearly a swindler and who deceived a personal friend of his. If you're going to establish this deception, do it right. Sorry? I feel like that's the undertone here. Yes, there's one more point. The defense appears to have forgotten. It obviously wasn't a trick, as a certain truth very plainly demonstrates. What? It seems to me that the cross-examination had better continue until we resolve this matter. Mr. Driver, you will amend your testimony with details of this truth. Of course, we must treat the matter scientifically after all. Ugh. I nearly had him there. Kinesis clearly took place because there's nowhere else 30 feet high for the birdcage to have fallen from. Oh, get the fuck out of here. The balloon. We've already established this, buddy. Let me press just in case.
Hold it!
What do you mean? Well, before the demonstration began, the victim was alive on stage in front of the audience. There are lots of witnesses who saw Mr. Asman on the experimentation stage. That's true. And the victim's neck broke as a result of an impact following a fall. Logically, therefore, the victim must have fallen from somewhere. The balloon that exploded was at an altitude of 60 feet. The point of impact of the tower was 30 feet up. The difference of 30 feet is therefore the total distance the birdcage fell. And there's no other location from which the cage could have fallen that distance if it didn't drop out of the sky. Ergo, the victim himself must have been beamed from the stage into the sky above the Crystal Tower. A trenchant scientific analysis. Dear me, every time I hear it explained, it sounds increasingly plausible. Oh yes, It's all very well thought out. Certainly, all the spectators on the day saw it. The birdcage plummeting 30 feet through the air, I mean. Irritatingly, yes.
Objection.
He killed the victim with a stab, hit him in a different cage that was in a green balloon to hide the other machine, which contains a wax version of the victim under the stage. What kind of balloons are these that they can hide shit in the balloon? I don't know. We know that somehow the birdcage appeared in the midair before falling down into the Crystal Tower. A fall of about 30 feet, or 9 meters. However, if you examine the diagram carefully, you'll see that there's only one other possibility location from which the birdcage could have fallen. The same distance of 30 feet. No. Well, it appears the defense is a possible explanation to put forward. Go ahead, counsel. Yes, my lord. Of course. You will indicate the place to which you are referring. The same diagram. Up here? Because there's a little... Don't let me go up. There's a little lip up here.
Take that.
If I had fallen from here... Okay.
Objection.
All right. Talk about right here? The drop?
Take that.
Oh, the drop. The place I'm referring to is here. Well, that's where the birdcage would have been to begin with. Which is exactly the point, my lord. Yes, the birdcage was in the machine on the stage. But what we must also consider is the height of the stage itself. Go on, counsel. It turns out that the experimentation stage was built at a considerable height above ground level. If you look at the diagram, in fact, you'll see it's about the same height above the ground as the balloon was above the crash site. When the experiment got underway, the machine and the birdcage were engulfed in steam. At that moment, the floor of the stage gave away, and if we assume there to be a void underneath, this birdcage and the one seen by the audience would have fallen almost exactly the same distance. Got him. So good. Once again, my lord, this all points to the fact that there was not one birdcage, but two.
Objection.
My learned friend has no evidence that the stage had such a contrivance in its design. Contrivance, my bad. Someone is responsible for the criminal destruction of the kinesis machine itself, it's true. However, the stage still stands. And take a moment to look at the photograph print in the scene following yesterday's explosion. Good lord, the metal grill that formed the floor on the machine is undone. Yes, it most likely blown open by the force of the explosion that destroyed the rest of the machine. The defense calls for the space below the stage to be investigated immediately. Mr. Drebber, it was you who built the kinesis machine, which means that it was you who built the two bird cages that were used to carry out this deception. Whether Professor Harebrain's hypothesis is sound or not makes no difference, because it's the construction of this machine that matters. A machine designed to take Mr. Asmon's life and lay the blame firmly at the professor's door, something that only could have been carried out by you, Mr. Enoch Drebber. Ooh.
Objection.
Don't try to reason with Drew if you value your sanity, Gorilla. Bridge sit. My learned friend has reached the end of his wild assertions. Prosecution would like to crush the defense's argument slowly, but surely. What? Your argument fails to hold water. On 2 counts. 2? Firstly, before and after the experiment, this witness went nowhere near the kinesis machine. Every relevant member of staff from the exhibition has been attested to that. And I believe members of Scotland Yard have also been on watch duty at every public exhibition. You broke him, Fulius. My bad, bro. In other words, Mr. Drebber had no opportunity to switch the alleged pair of bird cages.
Objection!
But I've already explained why he wouldn't have needed to. The nonsense with the crossbow? That doesn't bolster your case at all. The man who disappeared from the stage and the man who crashed into the tower are one and the same. The forensic investigation team report is unequivocally on that point. The second flaw in your assertion is a distinct lack of motive. Why would this man have wanted to take the victim's life? He had no reason to do so. A motive? Do I have to think of everything myself? I have here a contract provided by the witness. What contract is this, Lord Van Zykes? Contract into which Mr. Drebber entered with the victim, Mr. Asmund, it reads, Mr. Drebber is to receive 30% of all remunerations from government grants or other income. 30%. Certainly very favorable contractual conditions. But there was one very important provision bolted onto that clause. What provision? Mr. Drebber may only uphold this right on condition that both contracting parties are alive. In other words, if either of us were to die, the contract would become null and void. Well, who gives a fuck if he's dead? You just take the money anyways. They say I had nothing to gain from Mr. Asmund's death. Diametric opposite, in fact. Ugh. Need I say more? The witness had neither an opportunity nor a reason to commit the alleged crime. In short, the possibility of Mr. Drebber having done as you suggest is nil. It seems the defense's assertion was somewhat wide of the mark. Lord Van Zykes, you will submit the contract as evidence, please. It's true. If Drebber had no opportunity to switch the birdcage onto the stage with the one in the Crystal Tower, he couldn't have done it. And in any case, I have no idea what his motive might have been. There is one aspect of your argument that still holds true, however. There were 2 birdcages. The prosecution is unable to deny that. So I'm sure you're on the right lines, Mr. Naruhodo. I have no doubt there are other aspects of your assertion that are undeniable truths too. Well, it would seem that the defense has no rejoinder to offer. Well, I must say I'm a little surprised. I came here to testify about the machine I built, and instead my reputation is defiled. The prosecution's counter has set the record straight, I think. It's impossible that I'm the culprit.
Objection!
At the beginning of this trial, we believed that there was only 1 birdcage. Yet, now we know there must have been 2. In other words, there was more to the demonstration than we realized at first. I think it's abundantly clear that the same applies to the culprit. Get to the point. The stage demonstration was constructed and set up in its entirety by you, Mr. Drebber. Therefore, it's inconceivable that you had no hand in the events that transpired. So if circumstances mean it's impossible that you could have carried out the crime yourself, it points to the fact that someone else was involved. Someone else? Counsel, are you suggesting? Yes, my lord. Mr. Drebber had an accomplice.
Objection!
An accomplice now? Well then, I presume. You can prepare for what's to come. Now that you're accusing not only this witness, but someone else of the most serious crime. That if these accusations turn out to be false, then make no mistake, prosecution will demand an equal seriously punishment for your slander. Well, counsel, do you intend to pursue this course and formally accuse another party of involvement in this matter? What do I do here? At the moment, this is a little more than a hunch on my part. I mean, obviously, there's got to be an accomplice. What if Osmond's not dead? I don't know for sure if Drebber had an accomplice or even if he really is the culprit here. One way or another, though, I have to make my position clear as a lawyer. So what's my stance going to be? Did Drebber have an accomplice or not? The defense is ready to name Mr. Drebber's accomplice. Somehow the two bird cages must have been switched. Everything points to that. Yet, according to the coroner's report, that's not a possibility. But that inconsistency itself is a clue. Counsel. My lord? You have received a stark warning already. If you are nevertheless determined, then I must now ask you to identify this alleged accomplice by name. So, your answer, please. Who do you claim to have been Mr. Drebber's accomplice?
Take that!
The name of the person in question is... What's wrong, my Nippon's friend? Surely fear doesn't bind your tongue now. It's a little late for that. So was the girl his daughter? Maybe. After all, naming her in this capacity is definitely going to make waves. A lot of waves. I could very well turn every single person in this courtroom against me. I'm sure it'll be alright, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you, Ms. Susato. The enemy always appears larger than life, but you'll appear exactly the same to the enemy. Alright then. Here goes. So she was just covering for him, pretty much. You've kept us waiting long enough. Your answer, counsel. Now. The person who colluded with Mr. Drebber in order to carry out this wicked crime is Scotland Yard's coroner, Dr. Courtney Scythe. What the blazes are you talking about, Dr. Scythe? The head of the forensic investigation team and the coroner who conducted the autopsy of the victim? We know there were two bird cages, so who could have carried out the switch to complete the illusion? The accident happened in front of a huge crowd of inspectors, and the area was immediately sealed off. Then everyone, police officers included, were banished to make way for the forensic investigation team. When else could the switch have occurred? It could only have been in that team's presence. It's essential that the court determines exactly what happened the following the incident. The defense demands that Dr. Scythe be summoned to the witness stand at once to testify. This has to do with Lord Strongheart as well. You've got a nerve, lad. Standing up there, dragging the Yard's name through the mud. I didn't mean to. I know the woman very well. There's no better dead room worker out there. How dare you call her a criminal? My learned friend's imagination appears to be wilder than the East End at night. But the recklessness of your accusation aside, there's another grave problem with your argument. One which the prosecution demands you address at once. Grave problem? Oh my word. Who do you claim acted as the victim's doppelganger? What? Certainly if the bird cage containing the body of the victim was exchanged for another, the cage must also have contained a body. And yet, no missing persons or accidental deaths of anyone even remotely resembling the victim have been reported. Which means there was no one, dead or alive, who could have fulfilled the role of a body double for Mr. Asmund. Ugh, that's true. My argument is that there were two bird cages then. There must have been one person inside each. I don't know if I've got an answer to this yet, have I? What can I do to reveal how this body double stunt was achieved? So the wax one was somewhere. Present evidence. I think I have to present the glass. I have to present that glass, right? Very well. The defense will address my learned friend's concerns by presenting evidence that reveals the true nature of Mr. Asmon's body double. Good gracious, evidence? I do hope this isn't filibustering, counsel. The court is expecting a name. If you think you have relevant evidence, present it now. The body double and the birdcage were hiding inside the balloon and was floating above the stage, which means that any witnesses would have only seen them from 60 feet away. So who was it that appeared out of the explosion, some 8 meters above the spectators? Aha! The body double inside the second birdcage was...
Take that!
We know the victim, Mr. Asby, was in the birdcage that was situated inside the kinesis machine on the stage. And therefore, he couldn't have been inside the second birdcage. Instead, that contained something else. What's been described as a body double, which is what fell from the sky and crashed into the Crystal Tower. Yes, counsel, according to your somewhat elaborate version of events. And that body double inside the second birdcage was in fact... It's alright, Mr. Naruhodo. You're ready for this. Just steel yourself and come out with it. Thank you, Mr. Sato. I needed that. As I was saying, the body double inside the second birdcage was, as unbelievable as it may seem, that thing there.
Objection!
Open your eyes and look in the mind of Mindapon's friend. Now tell me, what are you playing at? Stand firm now, Ryunosuke. This is the time to show your Japanese spirit. As the court will observe, this is a waxwork model. A model, in fact, of an infamous London murderer from 10 years ago, the Professor.
Objection!
You started by indicating the leader of the forensic investigation team as an accomplice in this crime. And now you've moved on to the indicting waxworks? Yes, that's about the size of it. But why? Or why this waxwork? It's nothing like the victim. In fact, it could hardly resemble him less. What possible justification can you give? If you want to know why, ask Mr. Drebber. What? Just days before Professor Harebrain performed his public demonstration, Mr. Drebber abducted this model from Madame Tuspel's. Did you say abducted? You were right. You're on the right track, Jiro, buddy, but it's time to fix your shit. Tell him, Gorilla. And 2 days after the incident at the Great Exhibition, he returned it to the museum. And the timing. Is this true, Mr. Drebber? Oh. Okay. At first, I couldn't see why Mr. Drebber would have stolen the waxwork and then given it back again. But now, the reason is clear. He took it so that he could put it inside the second birdcage as a body double for Mr. Asmon.
Objection!
Are you hearing this, ladies and gentlemen of the jury? Are you hearing the defense's astonishing proposal? The witness that the witness fabricated this vast machine with the intention of deceiving some wretched scientist? That he did so in collusion with the country's finest coroner on a public stage in front of a vast audience? And that, to effect the deception, he used a waxwork model that in no way resembles the victim. Are we really to believe this far-fetched tale? What do you decide?
Objection!
Wait. Yes, if you put it like that, of course it sounds implausible. My lord, I need to speak, if you please. Go ahead, Mr. Foreman. Myself and my colleagues have reached an agreement. Here we go. Summation examination. Very good. In that case, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you will state your leanings for the court to hear now.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Guilty. Guilty.
Guilty!
Oh, wow.
Kill me.
Wait, why is that guy doing guilty? He was literally at the museum. This old fuck, he was literally at the museum. Cause someone abducted a... Ooh, this old head, bruh. So, as indicated by the foreman, the jury has reached a consensus. I knew that was going to happen. We shall get through this, Mr. Naruto, as we always do. And uncover some new truths along the way, I'm quite sure. Yes, I agree. I'm going to have to appeal the jurors as usual and see if I can persuade them to change their minds. The defense will now embark on a summation examination. Are you and your fellows ready to proceed, Mr. Foreman? He was sleeping. He was still at the museum. It's not like he sleepwalked into the museum. Very well. In that case, I ask you now to state clearly for all present to hear the grounds on which each of you has decided that the defendant is guilty of the crime of which he is charged. I've known that woman for years. She'd never be an accomplice to anything. It's utter nonsense to think that those two would ever be conniving with one another. Oh dear, this is most troubling. But surely the waxwork the man stole has nothing to do with the coroner, is it? I have had my own problems with members of the police. I do not trust them much. I've seen no rigorous proof that this waxwork was ever inside the birdcage. It's conjecture. Accusing someone without right evidences? It's not a proper job, is it? I won't have it. Somewhat unsurprisingly, it seems the introduction of this waxwork model of the proceedings has polarized opinion. Given that its face is obscured and its build in no way resembles to that of the victim, I can only applaud my learned friend's temerity as suggesting it as Mr. Asmon's body double. Yes, the applause is deafening, and yes, I know it seems extraordinary, but that's the point. That's why I have a strong feeling it's actually a greater clue than anyone yet realizes. What are you thinking, Mr. Naruto? I can't explain why at the moment, but I feel as though there's a specific reason why it was used, why it had to be this model. Really? A reason why? Nothing else would do, you mean? Yes, and I'm convinced. It's something far more significant than whether or not the model looked like the victim. Well, if that's the case, we must prevent the trial from ending prematurely at all costs. Yes, agreed. I have to find a way out of this. If you are ready, counsel, you may proceed with summation examination. Yes, my lord. Jury examination. The defense's rebuttal.
Hold it!
The order of things seem to have changed around here for some reason. I'm a copper lad. It's a copper's discretion to bend the rules sometimes when needs must. What's wrong with that? Where do I start? I've been working at the yard for 40-odd years. That's even more than I thought. We've only had a metropolitan police service in town for 70 years, you know. Of course, times have changed. The public didn't trust coppers back when I started. It was rough. We had to fight crime. We had to fight to win the public trust as well. And when we did, forensic science was in infancy too, even more than it is now. And she spearheaded the revolution. Dr. Scythe, you mean? That's right. About 10 years ago now it was, when I was still a youngish Bobby on the beat. That's when she started making a name for herself as a top-class coroner. And now look at her, head of the forensic investigation team, and a woman, no less. Well, you won't hear me complain. It's what we all dreamt of back then, I tell you. Could you tell me without holding that gun in the air? We were all out to uphold justice, lad. Full of vim, we were. Full of vim. That's coming across loud and clear. But we're only just starting to understand this case. What are you reading there, sir? The man behind those murders on Solar Pond Street was caught in 2 days flat. That's real policey for you. It's really not relevant to this case, is it? You're wrong there. Because it was Dr. Sy that charged of examining the bodies. And it was evidence arising from her work that led to the arrest of the scoundrel responsible. Oh. That's right. Oh, the woman is at the forefront of this country's fight against crime. The idea that she's somehow involved in this murky business is a load of old tosh. I thought it was up to me to press the jurors, not the other way around.
Hold it!
Why would you assume that? Well, quite simply, because that unsettling swindler has no relationship with women, does he? The woman, does he? True, as it stands, we don't know of any connection. Oh gosh, but it would be delightfully romantic if they were somehow have a mutual interest in the waxwork. Romantic? Woman of society such as myself views everything in the terms of relationships, you know. Well, you learn something new every day, even if you don't want to. One might wonder about a possible relationship between the defendant and this coroner woman. Or perhaps between the defendant and the handsome prosecutor just there. This woman may be more astute than I've been giving her credit for. If that's the woman's stance, then perhaps demonstrating some connection between the waxwork and Dr. Scythe would be enough. Yes, I agree. As soon as we have even a whiff of a connection, she'll be the first to know.
Hold it!
What sort of problems? Let's just say we have a run into each other on numerous occasions while I've been performing on the street. Right, I see. Obviously, artists such as myself cannot appear on stage as we work in close proximity to our audiences. So we perform our great magic in parks, on street corners, and the like. But the police use any excuse to make our lives difficult. Hey! I like juror number 3, bro.
Excuse me.
I like juror number 3. Do you have something to say in response to that, Mr. Ottermole? Who are you calling a mass murderer? Ah, sorry, my mistake. I got confused because I heard you look like him. I don't look anything like the man. You want to be locked up, Sonny? Thanks, Mr. Schultz. Perhaps we can move on. I was really wondering if you had something you wanted to add in response to what juror number 3 just said. And clearly you do. Back in my day, back in the good old days, it wasn't like this. What was it like, sir? We worked on our fingers to the bone to earn the public's trust, we did. And by Jove, we earned it. People respected us back then. Respected you? Though, no one would have called the coroner into question in them days. The coroner's report was the hallmark of an investigation done right. Especially when Dr. Courtney Stevens put her name to it. She was the best of the best, and the apple of the force's eye. Hold on a minute. What are you talking about? Who's Courtney Stevens? Ah, sorry. Got a bit carried away there. Stevens is Dr. Scythe's maiden name. Her maiden name? So that was before she was married. Death by hanging confirmed by Courtney Stevens. She's lying! That motherfucking professor is still alive! Her maiden name, so that was before she was married. Of course, yes. Silly me. Stevens. I'm sure I've seen that name somewhere recently. Anyway, the point is, those were the great days of policing, not like now. Sorry to interrupt, sir. But do you think you could change your statement to include that name? Well, yes. I don't see why not.
Objection!
These two statements clearly contradict each other. Good gracious. To whose statements do you refer, counsel? So, juror number 2. Oh gosh, me? What can I do for you? I presume that you heard what juror number 6 said in his statement. It's brought to light the main name of the coroner, Dr. Scythe, which in turn has revealed a connection that wasn't apparent before. Well, naturally, as a woman of society, I find such connections and relationships irresistible. But oh golly, I'm afraid I fail to see what you mean. Dr. Scythe's maiden name is Stevens, and through that name, the coroner is very definitely linked to the waxwork of the killer. The defense has evidence to prove it. My goodness, evidence you say? How utterly enthralling. Counsel, the court cannot overlook that last remark. I very much hope there is substance to your claim. Of course, my lord. I would ask the court to look at this. The evidence that clearly links Dr. Scythe to the mass murderer known as the Professor.
Take that!
Take that! I have here a certain autopsy report from 10 years ago. A 10-year-old autopsy report? What relevance does that have? It is, of course, from the autopsy of the person portrayed in the waxwork, the killer known as the Professor. The Professor's... But the man was a capital offender, so... That's right. This is the certification of death that was drawn up after the convict's execution. The identity of the killer was never made public, so the report gives few details. But what's important is the name of the coroner who wrote it. Courtney Stevens. Oh my, Courtney Stevens. Strike a light! It appears that the Professor's autopsy was conducted by Dr. Scythe 10 years ago. And a few days ago, Mr. Drebber very deliberately stole the waxwork of the Professor from Madame Tuspel's. A waxwork that doesn't in fact resemble the victim, Mr. Asman, at all. Do you suppose there's some unsavory relationship between those events? Absolutely. I'm sure of it. There's no doubt in my mind that the Professor case is at the heart of a link that we have yet to uncover. Between Dr. Courtney Scythe and Mr. Enoch Drebber. Hidden links, mysterious connections, secret relationships. That is all the most extraordinary. We're surely obliged now to explore this further. Womp. Where might the motherfucker be? We don't know. Quite right. We can't let this trial continue to an end now. Come to an end now. Not whilst there's this cloud of suspicion hanging over the yard's best coroner. It wasn't like this in my day, but we're still here to uphold justice in the end. Oh, you old man, bro.
Hold it!
But you claimed the whole instantaneous kinesis demonstration was a trick. That I did. But there's more than one way to pull a rabbit out of a hat, isn't there? Sorry? I grant you, given that this cage appeared from a missing explosion, there had been no need to use a real person. But if a waxwork has been used, the culprit could at least have had decency to make it look like the victim. I'm not sure exactly how much criminals are covered by decency. The point is, if you're going to make a claim about that waxwork being inside the birdcage, you need to give us some evidence. Without that, it's just not science. I suppose we should expect nothing less than a logical argument from a fellow of the Royal Society. But that perhaps means his mind could be changed if we manage to present suitable evidence. Evidence that the Professor waxwork was inside that birdcage. Can I produce that or not? Can I produce that? I don't know if I can. What's evidence to prove our case? Glass. Oh yeah! Finally, I can use this fucking glass. Actually, I have something that I'd like you to see, sir. Oh? I must warn you that I firmly believe it's only wise to trust in men in white coats. Hey, what's up, Bappy? It's going, man. How are you, bro? So you don't trust anyone in black? Looking in the mirror must be very trying. Racist.
Take that!
Black? What's that, a piece of glass? Though it's unusually thick for glass. Yes, it's a piece of broken glass that we found inside the jacket on the waxwork. As you say, it's not ordinary glass though, it's very thick and clearly made for extra strength. Much like the special glass that was developed for the construction of the Crystal Tower. Crystal Tower. Holy smoke! Exactly, the centerpiece of the great exhibition, where the very incident we're talking about took place. On the day in question, the birdcage fell from above. It smashed through a window of that special glass. from whence this small piece originated. Is that it? Precisely. So, what do you say? Now that clear evidence in support of the assertion has been placed before you. Well, as I said, I only trust men in white coats as a rule. However, when the reasoning is sound, it's fair to say color shouldn't come into it. In light of what you have shown me here, yes, I feel obliged to change my position on the matter. In that case, juror number 4, you will amend your statement now, please.
Objection!
If you could put down your corn for a moment, juror number 5. Oh, you mean me? You pointed out that it's wrong to make an accusation without evidence. But the accusation that the waxwork model was inside the second birdcage on the day in question is not without supporting evidence, as the defense demonstrated to the juror sitting beside you. Oh, is that right? Would it be fair to say you didn't follow the argument? I don't understand much besides Colonel Cobb, to be honest. Of course you don't. If I could interject here, please do, sir. Now that this assertion of yours about the waxwork has been backed up by some solid evidence, it would be wrong of me, of a man of science, not to pursue the matter further. Alright, catching a short break at work. Nice, W break. Glad to hear you're doing well, bro. W break. Hope it finishes fast, bro. Well, me too, then. Sorry? If this brainly gentleman says he's right, then he must be right. See? I wouldn't dream of going against Colonel Cobb or anyone who's got stuff in between the ears. Appreciate it, Goo. No problem, man. Success! If you can call it that. Thank you, counsel. That will do. As a result of the summation examination, the jury's overall leaning has changed. 2 jurors now call guilty against 4 who call not guilty. Accordingly, the court has failed to reach a consensus at this time. The trial must continue. Yeah, we did it. Oh, well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Another wonderful victory. A waxwork of the despicable professor. Used as a body double for the victim in this quite extraordinary case. Being on a break, I got 5 minutes, so I'm gonna grab a snack and get back to it. Appreciate you, Bappy. Good luck at work, man. Good luck at work, man. I must say, it's extremely hard to believe this assertion could possibly be true. However, it would appear that it does at least warrant further investigation. It's the waxwork of the professor that links Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe. And I'm convinced that there's a special significance to that link. I don't know what you're hoping to prove, lad. I really don't. The truth, sir, by using evidence and testimony. The court is to delve deeper into the alleged involvement of the waxwork in this case. The prosecution calls for the owner of the model to be summoned as a witness. The owner? Madame Tuspels. I really thought Lord Van Zeiss would object to this whole line of inquiry. Very well, I concur. Make arrangements for Madame Tuspels to appear as a witness, with immediate effect. Listen carefully, my learned friend. Oh, yes? You should know that you're on the brink of opening Pandora's box. Oh. Uh-oh. The brink of opening Pandora's box. And by that, I think he means accusing Scotland Yard. And pretty much making a mockery of this stupid British court. During that time, the prosecution will summon the new witness and prepare for her taking the stand. Madame Tuspels, yes, I shall see to it at once, my lord. Suck this, Pandora. To be continued. Pandora's a young woman. Shut up! Ah, the knight errant himself. Oh, have you been watching from the gallery, Mr. Sholmes? I've been on the edge of my seat the entire time. Courtroom trials are fascinating affairs, as a spectator at least. I'm glad you've been enjoying yourself. I have to ask. What on earth is going on? It makes no sense. What's this professor business all about? Doesn't look like any professor I've ever met before. Who even is he? Ah, of course. You were in Germany already 10 years ago. Yes, the professor. When I discovered he was the one who had been abducted, a sense of foreboding stirred within me. But who knew the monster would come knocking at your door? My heartfelt sympathies. Thanks, Sholmes. As it turns out, Lord Van Zykes is even more intimately tied to this case than any of us realize, isn't he? Yes, how true. His great friend from university in the dock. And now a waxwork of the killer who took his esteemed brother's life makes an appearance, too. I imagine even the shrewd Mr. Reaper failed to foresee that kick in the teeth. An extraordinary move on your part, my dear fellow. Throw that in front of the man. Make it sound deliberate. Can't help feeling that this professor case is really very puzzling. Oh yes? In what particular manner? Well, there's Mr. Drebler, Dr. Scythe, and Lord Van Zykes. It seems that everybody in this trial has a link to the case somehow. Yes. In fact, I alone am not a member of the set. Though that leaves me as an empty set, all alone with no intersection to any other. Excuse me. Is that Gregson? Oh. Dr. Scythe? Uh-oh. Ah, Dr. Courtney Scythe. Niece Stevens. Good day to you. Hello, Sholmes. I was very shrewd of you. One in particular, pray. You requested that 10-year-old autopsy report from Gregson, didn't you? Why would you assume such a thing? Because Gregson told me. I think it's been 10 years. 10 years in the laboratory, wielding my scalpel. I smell of nothing but corpses and disinfectant. Policemen on the jury had a lot to say about you as it happens, Dr. Scythe. And I've accused you of being complicit in what happened. I'm hoping that you'll take the stand and tell the truth about what really happened. That certainly won't be possible. Lord Van Zykes won't be summoning me as a witness. Lord Strongheart has forbidden it. Lord Strongheart, you bastard! Lord Strongheart? The Pandora's box you were warned about? It's a professor's case. But please don't make the mistake of thinking you'll get any information about it out of me. But attempting to hide from the truth, that's cowardice. I've always fought crime in the way that I see fit. I have no regrets, none at all. Oh, I see. So they wanted Asmund dead. Because I remember Strongheart was talking about Asmund being like a criminal. So they're going to kill him in any way possible. And that, if that means, you know, blaming an innocent, so be it. That's crazy. Now the 500 scalpels per month makes kind of sense. And that's all I came here to say. So, good day to you. You ain't going nowhere, bitch. She mentioned it too. This Pandora's box. Whatever does it all mean? There's really no cause for concern, I assure you. When the trial resumes, the meaning will become all too apparent, whether you like it or not. Huh? Now then, I believe it's almost time. I must make my way back to the public gallery. The edge of my seat awaits! I think maybe you're enjoying yourself a little too much. Yes, one word of warning before I go. If, in the course of the trial this afternoon, you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand. Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. All right, I understand. Thank you. Good. I shall make myself scarce then. I purchased a bar of caramel earlier, so I shall be gnawing on that while you gnaw away at the truth. What did that warning from Mr. Sholmes really mean? I wonder. Especially the bit about whatever may come to pass. If he is a corrupt piece of shit, then a lot of cases in all of these years might be faked by her by changing the corpses and autopsies. It's time for the final chapter. I'm determined to find the truth, no matter what. This whole forensic team is a sham, bro. Fucking sham. In the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I hereby reconvene the proceedings of this court. Counsels for the defense and prosecution, are you ready and able to continue? Prosecution is ready, my lord. Yes, my lord. The defense is also ready. Also, as the court is aware, the case under our scrutiny began with a damaging incident at the Great Exhibition. Yet we now find ourselves embroiled in the details of a convicted felon who was sent to the gallows a decade ago. This trial has certainly defied all expectation, as it seems to be the fate of all trials in which this Nepenthe is involved, my lord. So then, let us begin our exploration of the defense's assertion that the waxwork was cardinally involved in this matter. Lord Van Zykes? My lord? Are we still awaiting the arrival of Madame Tuspels? Not at all. She is in the antechamber as we speak and ready to be summoned. Very well. Bring in the witness. At once, my lord. Bailiff! Show Madame Tuspels to the stand. Things are about to become a lot more intense. If Drebber is responsible, as I'm sure he is, it means he must have had an accomplice in Dr. Scythe. And what connects the pair of them is the waxwork. Yes, the model of the professor. That's the key to the link between these otherwise unrelated individuals. It's a tenuous link, admittedly, but at present, it's all we have to go on. Is she making one of Sholmes? Oh my god. Zutro! Hey, man. My name is Madame Esmeralda Tuspels. I am a waxwork artisan. The proprietress of the Madame Tuspels Museum of Waxwork. You have to pardon me for working as I testify. My new exhibit must open very soon. Oh, so he finally gets a statue, does he? Now there are two of them in the world. Oh my! What expression is she carving onto that face? A number of days ago, a particular waxwork model was stolen from your museum. Can you confirm this? Oui, that is true. At first, we believe it had been kidnapped. A waxwork model kidnapped? Yes, my lord. There was a demand for ransom money left behind the culprit. However, according to what I have just been told outside the courtroom, that was not the true reason. I understand it was utilized as a substitute for the body of a murder victim. At present, that is no more than conjecture proposed by the defense. This is the victim of the case in question, Mr. Odie Osmond. But of course, I know him well. He's a part of my odious personages exhibit. I detest to say what is evident, but Mr. Osmond does not resemble the professor at all. Yes, but perhaps their faces are very similar. Are you suggesting that we should see now the damasked visage of the professor? I have here the key, but it is strictly forbidden to open the lock. This is absurd. Pardon? I don't know what face you've carved onto your fancy figure beneath that mask. But clearly, it won't be that of the actual killer. Indeed. The man's identity was never made public after all. That trial took place in a closed court. The proceedings were strictly confidential. The condemned man was summarily executed. His identity remains a closely guarded national secret. There is no possible way that a repository of tawdry exhibits could get its hands on that information. It would seem you are unaware of the Tuspel's principles. What principles? The family Tuspels has always prided itself on sculpting its models a la perfection. Every detail, including the visage, is fashioned with complete fidelity. Our principles. There is a well-known legend about the Tuspels waxwork from time of the French Revolution. A member of the Tuspels family is said to have made a waxwork of the queen who was executed. Oui, that is true. It was a century ago now. I believe the queen's face was carved in the minutes following her death, actually, at the guillotine site. You are correct. The model is on display still today in the House of Horrors. We Tuspels will stop at nothing to obtain a faithful replica of our subjects. Dear me. Somewhat disturbing tenacity of purpose. It is the only way to obtain a truly lifelike representation of the subject. It has been my family's secret for generations. Do you mean to say that beneath the mask? Oui, the true visage of the killer is there. This is ludicrous. It's out of the question. The professor spread terror throughout Great Britain. As a result, the Madame Tuspel special exhibit remains extremely popular, even today. The killer emerging from his own grave. It's a sight to behold, you should come. I think, madam, it would be beneficial to hear your formal testimony on this matter. You'll explain every detail of this macabre model and your personal involvement in its creation. With pleasure. Like, can we please have your money, pretty please? Super beautiful, pretty please? 0. W. Joe. I'm busy, bruh. The special exhibit in the House of Horrors is based on the rumor that shocked society in London. An impression of the visage was taken directly from the corpse in accordance with Tuspel's family principles. I enlisted the aid of the gravedigger and created a mold for the head in the cemetery just before the interment. I hid myself until he gave me a signal. I was there for a very long time that night. At dawn approached, I was very worried that I could be discovered. Gravedigger? The man sanctioned this? Oui! I'll do all that is necessary to achieve that true resemblance my family is celebrated for. Nobody else knew. Only the gravedigger. What harm did it do, huh? So you truly saw it? The face of that monster? Naturally, I was aware at the time that his identity was a secret. But Tuspels would not be Tuspels if we did not insist on absolute fidelity to our sculptures. I don't believe this. I myself have seen the special exhibit at your museum, madam. A truly blood-curdling scene in which the murderer is emerging from his own grave. The scene it depicts was the subject of many rumors in London 10 years ago. I have here a newspaper from the time. The special exhibit was based upon the picture in this article. Asmund! Ooh! The picture was taken by Asmund. It was the most detailed account of what happened as reported by the eyewitnesses who saw it. Asmund took the picture. Man rises from the grave. It's too absurd for words. And so that's why they had to get rid of Asmund, because Asmund saw the face. The public enjoyed absurdity, monsieur. That is why I have reproduced the scene as carefully as possible in my museum. And it's a waxwork from that exhibit that was stolen from some days before the incident at the Great Exhibition, wasn't it? That is correct. The professor you see before you here. Most puzzling. Counsel for the defense, proceed with the cross-examination. This waxwork links Drebber to Dr. Scythe. And there has to be some reason for that which hasn't yet come to light. But I'll find it. I'll get to the bottom of what really happened. I'll prove that Dr. Scythe and Drebber were in on this crime together. Wait, so that man was Asmund? No, I think Asmund is the one that took the picture. He was a part of it somehow, because this is his name. I don't know if A, he took the picture, or he, like, drew this, or what. At Lowgate Cemetery, just behind the prison on the night that foul demon's execution, the newly interfered professor forced off his grave cover as he clawed free of the earth. The young man who witnessed this scene was on the verge of raising a shriek, when in the next second a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, whose breath then stilled once more. The youth then finally released the scream he had been holding and ran for his life. The university student who experienced the shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the University of London and a resident of its student dorms. So it's all coming together, because he said it was shot in the chest. He was shot in the chest. This is the one that was found at the Crystal Tower. So this is the waxwork. The special exhibition in the house is based on the rumor that shocked society in London.
Hold it!
That was him! And that rumor would be a 10-year-old tale now, but one that no Londoner would ever forget. Ah, right, I know just what you're talking about, I think. Of course, it couldn't be anything else. Yes, that story will never disappear. The tale of the condemned killer rising from the dead. That is a central attraction of my House of Horrors. The rumor was whispered all over the city, and it was like this. It was in Lowgate Cemetery behind the prison. Okay, I just read this. Then the corpse climbed out of his own grave. And then somebody shot him? Who? Who was it? Nobody knows, even today. But remember, it was just a rumor. Perhaps nothing more than a ghost story. The good people of London, they love stories like that. You think they buried a living person and then he came back to life and they shot him? And if that happened, both the doctor not only preserved the body intact, but changed the face of the professor to look like another person. Something like that. This whole thing's fucked. But it was just a story. I mean, this is exactly the scene that can be seen today at your museum, isn't it? Wait, the special exhibit was modeled on that very illustration. So it was drawn. Okay, so it was drawn. For a while afterwards, the contents of that article were reproduced in every newspaper imaginable. Madam, might I say something? Please go ahead, Mademoiselle. When something is described as a rumor, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's entirely made up. I believe that often, rumors contain elements of the truth. I see that people that from the East can be just as astute as people from Europe. Can we be sure, for instance, that the professor's execution was successful? It is not possible for the dead to come back to life. Sorry? 10 years ago, I was there in Lowgate Cemetery, after the criminal known as the Professor was killed by hanging. I took a wax impression of his visage from the corpse just before it was interred. So I can assure you, the man was dead. I see. Would certainly appear the condemned man suffered the intended fate. So, like, if she wouldn't have had the bullet hole on the wax costume, or on the wax work, if she grabbed the visage before he was shot in the grave. So maybe they did stick a living person in there. I don't know. This is whack, bro.
Hold it!
Is that true of every waxwork in your museum then? It is, assuming the subject is dead, of course. Live subjects have to cooperate in a similar way. I have letters from imprisoned criminals all the time, you know. What sort of letters? When my time comes, please make a waxwork of me. Oh, wow. No. My museum is famous, monsieur. To be made into a waxwork is an honor. For some criminals, a symbol of status, even. Because nothing says hardened criminal better than wax. It is thanks to one kill in particular that my museum has gained such popularity in London. I refer to the star of the special exhibit, of course, the Professor, whose form you claim to have captured by taking a pressure from the actual corpse. There are no exceptions to the principles of Tuscal's.
Hold it!
Surely that's illegal, isn't it? It would seem the proprietress of the repository of novelties was blinded by monetary greed. Had nothing to do with money. The man is part of London's criminal history. That is why I had to sculpt him, to record this history. It is the raison d'etre of Tuscal's museum. But if the man was convicted in a closed court and sent for immediate execution, then surely nobody but the members of the judiciary present know the killer's true identity. I assure you, behind that mask is hidden the true face of the Professor. Do you realize what you're saying? The Professor's identity is a national secret. I understand. And now the truth about the special exhibit has been revealed. It must perhaps close. Of course it will. As you will your entire museum if you don't tread carefully, madam. That could be. Another interesting chapter in the history of my family, I think, don't you? So 10 years ago, on the night of the Professor's execution, you took a wax impression of his face from the corpse? Oui. Bam, 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 bam.
Hold it!
You were there longer than you expected to be? I had some difficulties in capturing the subject's form correctly. To remove the mask, the mouth of the cadaver fell open, and I had some problems with the chin. Dare I ask? The man had been dead for a short while already, you see. His muscles were relaxing, and consequently, his chin would not align itself correctly. Oh dear, what a horrible thought. Under normal circumstances, I would have an assistant with me. However, that night, I was alone. And as a consequence, I missed my preferred window of time. What do you mean? When I take impressions of the visage of cadaver, I always wait until 3 hours after the death. Why 3 hours? Is that amount of time significant? It's because of rigor mortis. A rigor mortis? Huh. It's the name given to a phenomenon that occurs in recently deceased bodies. As a rule, 3 hours post-death, the muscles in the body begin to stiffen. By approximately 10 hours post-death, the entire body is completely rigid and inflexible. And from then on that point, the muscles slowly start to revert to the relaxed state. The effect is often used to estimate the time of death when a body is discovered. Well, that was an education, if a slightly scary one. As Madame Elise said, rigor mortis commences 3 hours after death and it starts in the jaw. I see. So that's why you wait. Before that time, the mouth falls open, and it's very difficult to do my work. Ugh. It's getting hard for me to do my work, with all this talk of corpses. I wonder about that information that the course just heard from Madame. Significant. And the information about rigor mortis that you just shared with us, would you mind including in your forward testimony? I believe it could be significant, you see. Of course, I do not mind at all. Can't help feeling that after this latest topic, the atmosphere in the courtroom has become extremely grave. This is no time for jokes, Miss Susato. Hold it! No! Okay. Can I ask my father to give you a very okay. So that's the one we have to do.
Hold it!
You say that dawn was approaching. What was the time of day then, approximately? Well, I could not say. But when I left the cemetery with my utensils of wax, the morning light was becoming visible. The execution took place on June 17th, which had the earliest sunrise of that year. Indeed it did. First light would have been around 4:40 in the morning. That really is early. The fact is, I had very little time, so I finished my work in half an hour. It was necessary to complete the impressions and bury the body before daybreak, of course. If somebody discovered me there, it would have been a catastrophe, so I had to hurry. And is it me, or does Mr. Sholmes seem to be taking shape more quickly now, too? Okay. I wonder, is what she said particularly significant? Okay. Is it gonna switch with the other one?
Hold it!
I paid the gravedigger money to keep my little secret, of course. But with the morning light, I knew that a warden from the prison would commence his patrol of the area. Couldn't you have just paid off the warden too, then? I had already paid the gravedigger, as I said. You cannot buy the silence of everyone, or the secret is no longer a secret, huh? The sun rose at 4:40 a.m. that day, which means that it would have been around 4 when you began your sculpting work. Oui. That must be correct. That would be when the gravedigger gave me the signal to come out of hiding. No, he died at midnight. That's all I have to go on. What's your feeling, Mr. Naruto? For some reason, Dr. Scythe went along with Dreeber's plan. Now, if it's really true, the professor is the only other thing we know that links to the pair of them. So I feel sure that the waxwork must be a clue to this mystery somehow. Okay? Come on. Alright, I gotta piss real quick. I gotta piss really bad. Hold on. She said rigor mortis starts 3 hours, right? Before the onset. No, because if she started at 4, I'll say the body died at midnight. Madam Tusples, I have here the autopsy report that was filled 10 years ago now. It confirms the death of the professor following his execution at the gallows. And is that a problem? I believe it is, because your testimony and a particular detail in the report completely contradict one another. Are you going to explain yourself, my Nippon's friend? According to her testimony, Madame Tusples was creating her wax impressor just before dawn. At that time, rigor mortis had not yet set in. Am I correct so far, madam? You are, yes. As I said, the stiffening of the jaw is the first sign of rigor mortis, 2 to 3 hours after death. But the man's chin was limp, so he could not have been dead for a long time. But on the other hand, if you look at Dr. Scythe's report, it clearly states the following. Death by hanging confirmed at midnight, 17th of June. No. The professor indeed died at midnight that day. That by the time you were sculpting his face, rigor mortis would already have been set in. Yes, you are right. The chin would have been completely stiff. In other words, this report is wrong.
Objection!
No coroner makes mistakes when recording the time of death. The very idea is absurd. In that case, there's only one possible conclusion. The execution didn't actually take place at the stated time. Oh! We're lying now on the autopsy reports. Counsel, this is beyond folly. So, if that's the case, if she's lying on that one, she's lying on this one. Hemorrhage of a wound to the chest that pierced the heart, inflicted by a sharp implement. That was the gunshot, but they made it seem like that happened then. When it was the fall. We know that? Fuck, we didn't. But you also implicate members of staff at Barclay Prison where the execution took place. By heck, extraordinary. Not in my day.
Objection!
My learned friend appears to have overlooked one very crucial fact. What fact? The professor died that night, without question. He did, of course he did. I moved the man's lip jaw with my own hands. There was no...
Objection!
Yes, the professor died that night. But what if he didn't die at the gallows? Didn't die at... Are you insane? What exactly are you suggesting did happen in that case? It's almost impossible to believe, but it would explain the link between Dr. Scythe, the professor, and that one other person of interest. I have evidence that will explain exactly what happened. Explain exactly what I'm suggesting happened that night. Counselor, present the evidence at once. The evidence that allegedly explains what really happened on the night of the professor's execution. I love this music. This music gets me so hyped, bro.
Take that!
What happened that night is written very plainly in this newspaper article. Executed criminal returns in the dead of night at local cemetery. You're suggesting it was a corpse coming back from the dead now? Well, if this article is to be believed, yes. The professor, assumed dead following his execution, emerged from his grave and was killed again.
Objection!
Don't be a fool. That's simply a rumor, published by the gutter press. Can you be certain of that? Are you serious? The point is, as the article says, there was a witness to what happened. My word, yes indeed. Asoi, the young man who stole into the cemetery by chance that night.
Objection!
Of course there was a witness. The story didn't write itself, but obviously the man made it all up. In any case, this was 10 years ago now. There would surely be no hope of finding him.
Objection!
On the contrary, my lord, we all know this witness well. What? Are you suggesting, counsel, that you've identified the person in question? That you know who claims to have seen these utterly incredible events take place? Yes, my lord. In fact, you can say that he's right here before my very eyes. You will substantiate your latest claim then, counsel. Who is the alleged witness of this staggering scene from the cemetery 10 years ago?
Take that!
The man in question is Mr. Enoch Drebber. Drebber? The previous witness? The special exhibit in the House of Horrors at Madame Tussbell's Museum of Waxwork recreates that decade-old scene in the great detail. Condemned criminal emerging from the grave and beside the tomb. A young man with a lantern stumbling upon the terrifying sight. And that young man is a 10-year younger Mr. Enoch Drebber. Surely not, counsel. Drebber was there? In Lowgate Cemetery? What is all this talk about Mr. Drebber? Is the name significant? Of course, Madame Tussbell doesn't know, does she? Yes, it's extremely significant, madam. This is to your situation as well, in fact. What situation? The theft of the Professor Waxwork from your museum some days ago was perpetrated by the very same man. But that would mean Madame Tussbell's. It would appear you know the name, Enoch Drebber. Oui, yes, I know it. But from a long ago in the past. What? Oh my. Good gracious! Explain yourself. Tell us everything you know. Yes. Yes, of course. Shit's getting crazy, bruh. The story of the young man and terrible sight he witnessed in the cemetery 10 years ago. My cock. Alright, bruh. Was established in every single newspaper in London and throughout Great Britain. However, in all of the articles, the witness was simply described as a certain young man. No details were published about his identity. His name was never revealed. That is, apart from one newspaper. The Daily Circus. It is a paper from which comes from the article I have already shown to the court. You're saying that his full name was only publicized in that article? Goodness me, yes, here it is. The university student who experienced this shocking event is Mr. Enoch Drebber, a disciple of science at the Student University of London and a resident of its student dorms. Unbelievable. When I read the article, I went to meet with the man. His discovery of the condemned criminal coming back to life at the cemetery in the dead of night would make a perfect exhibit for my House of Horrors, whether it was the truth or not. I see, so you went to meet Mr. Drebber in order to scope the waxwork of the man, did you? Exactamente. He was studying science at the University of London in those days. He was just a poor student. Paid him £5 to model for the waxwork. And since that time, it has been in my museum to recreate the scene of the terror from the cemetery. So 10 years ago, a young man appealed to the public about an extraordinary event he'd witnessed. A criminal who had been put to death, re-emerging from his grave in the middle of the night. But the public treated his claim as nothing more than an amusing anecdote that was soon forgotten. 10 years later, the same man steals a waxwork model for the executed criminal, ostensibly to use as a body double for the victim in the case we're discussing here today. Even though the waxwork build is a poor match for the victim, its face is obscured by a mask. So the question is, why would the man do such a thing? Which brings us to 3 days ago, when the birdcage crashed into the Crystal Tower. If the birdcage had in fact contained not the body of Mr. Aswood but the same waxwork, the coroner from Scotland Yard who investigated Dr. Scythe would have noticed immediately. And yet, she submitted this autopsy report for the victim, which the court had seen earlier. Why? Because the waxwork was that of the professor. Is that what you're saying? Dr. Scythe put her name to a document confirming the death of a condemned criminal who was still alive. A criminal whose apparent resurrection was witnessed by Mr. Drebber. But that misconduct was a deadly secret the coroner would do anything to protect. Which is precisely why Mr. Drebber used that particular waxwork as the body double. The blackmailer. My lord, this court must summon Dr. Scythe to the stand. The defense is determined to find out exactly how the coroner and Mr. Drebber are connected. But according to the missive I received this morning through the prosecutor's office, Dr. Scythe is unable to participate in these proceedings. Is that not the case? She told us herself, didn't she? That's forbidden it. Bastard. Something happened on the night of that killer's execution 10 years ago. And surely nobody would want to get to the bottom of that more than Lord Van Zykes. Say it. The prosecution calls for the instructions in that missive to be scrapped. Let's go! He's on our side now, bro. But Lord Van Zykes, the missive was issued from the Lord Chief Justice's office.
Objection!
Let's go. The assigned prosecutor has the final say on the policy in any particular trial. In other words, me. Yes. Let Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe both take the stand together. Nah, W. Van Zykes, bro. Very well, I will uphold your request. Bailiff, send a subpoena with immediate effect. Alright then, Enoch Drebber and Dr. Scythe. If they weren't colluding with one another, this crime could have never been committed. I'm just a stone's throw away, I can feel it. The truth behind all of this is about to come out. Thank you for your attendance at such short notice, Dr. Scythe. I'm disappointed in you, Lord Van Zykes. You've completely betrayed the agreed policy of both Scotland Yard and the prosecutor's office. Betrayal is not in my nature, as long as the truth isn't compromised. If it is, if there's even a hint of wrongdoing, then no matter whom it concerns or disgruntles, I will pursue the matter to the bitter end, as would any prosecutor worth his salt. Starting to sound like someone we know, bro. Edgeworth. Mr. Drebber, you took the victim's life by means of a machine that you constructed in your workshop. And Dr. Scythe, as the investigative coroner, you were the first one on the scene to examine the victim's body. It's belief of the defense that you collaborated with each other and were both complicit in this crime. And where's your evidence? At present, we have no definitive evidence, but we do have a very significant clue. What are you talking about? I am talking, of course, about the waxwork. This model of the killer known as the Professor, who was sentenced to death 10 years ago. You don't need to tell me. I witnessed the man's execution with my own eyes and officially pronounced him dead. That remains to be seen. Is that so? According to the newspaper reports from Time, on the night following his execution, the killer came back to life. Don't waste my time. And the sole witness to the mystery event was you, Mr. Drebber, wasn't it? If what you saw in the graveyard that night 10 years ago wasn't some chilling fiction, but reality, it would make you privy to a very great secret of Dr. Scythe's. A secret so profound it could compel the coroner to agree to collaborate in your evil scheme, in fact. Mr. Drebber, tell the court. Tell everyone the truth of what you saw that night in Lowgate Cemetery. He's not saying anything, so he was the student who saw it. You can see the resemblance, actually, can't you? With the man of Tuspells, I mean. Surely he's not going to claim that that's really what he saw, especially not after all these years. He was a research student at the University of London, was he? I bet too clever for his own good, if you ask me. Excuse me. What an interesting twist. When at the time, not one person would take me seriously. Yet now here we are, 10 years later, suddenly my story matters, and in a court of law, too. Very well then, if everyone so wishes. Let's be frank, I'll tell you the truth of what happened that night, for what it's worth. So, Mr. Drebber, your testimony, please, about the events that night 10 years ago. You will tell the court exactly what you stumbled across in Lowgate Cemetery. Yes, of course, as you wish. The reason I was in Lowgate Cemetery at all 10 years ago was for a spot of moonlighting, shall we say. Yes, the illustration in that newspaper article was based on what I witnessed that night. But thinking back now, I realized that I never actually saw the professor. Oh, get the fuck out of here, bro. Soon afterwards, I was visited by a young woman who sculpted a model for me from wax. I didn't give up on my dream of becoming a scientist, and it was all because of that newspaper article. Get the fuck out of here, you're lying, bro. Wait a minute. You're claiming you didn't actually see the professor now? Of course, you have to be a screw loose if you believe the corpse come back from the dead. But, so, you're saying this article is not worth the paper it's printed on? I think that would describe it perfectly. The details in the article aren't true. It nullifies your argument for why Mr. Drebber and Dr. Scythe have been working together. Corpse! Corpse! So he's discrediting himself to cripple my argument. Tell me, witness. You claim to have been in the cemetery on some auxiliary business. Can you elaborate? That's right. Grave robbing, to be precise. As you know, Logate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So among the students at the university, I had a reputation for being haunted by the ghosts of condemned convicts. Grave robbing, you say? Yes. Exhuming fresh corpses to sell is reasonably lucrative. Of course, I never laid a finger on any valuables buried with the dead. So you were on one of those so-called resurrectionists. A particularly unpleasant scourge on society. Actually, my fellows and I went by another name. The Repurposers. That is quite beyond the pale. You would invite divine retribution, sir. Yes, well, I think I suffered retribution enough. Daily Circus eventually unearthed my name and put it in print. It caused me great many headaches. In the end, I had to leave the university. That was the only paper with the bad grace to identify unambiguously, I might add. I see. You know who made that? Asman. So he wanted to get back at Asman for outing him. Out of interest, who drew the illustration for the article? Ah, yes, that was the reporter who exposed me. He sketched that right in front of me as I described the scene. Obviously, as time ticked on, I barely regretted what I'd done. Claiming to have seen something I never truly saw. Foolish. Very foolish. Well, counsel for the defense, you may proceed to the cross-examination now. At once, my lord. Fucking liar. Oh! There's blood on it. We're not gonna talk about the blood right here? When the lens is extended, the dark staining is visible on the bellows. Fucking bastard! And that was when the gunshot occurred. No, this was on Drebber's neck. So he had the camera open. Look, the camera's open. And then he got shot. Because this is an illustration by Asman.
Hold it!
What are you talking about? Then I think I explained already, didn't I? Logate Cemetery is at the rear of Barclay Prison. So it was renowned among us students, being haunted by convicts. For some absurd reason, I was scared of the graveyard at night. As a result, only too willing to believe that nonsense about the dead coming back to life. I said you actually saw it. I said what I seen in my mind's eye. After all, resurrection is impossible, isn't it? You have to be unhinged to think otherwise. Unless, of course, you have some evidence that proves that I encountered the professor that night. I do. I don't know. I do.
Hold it!
That young woman being Madame Tusples, of course. Precisely. I must say, I didn't expect to run into her again like this 10 years later. As I explained, I went by the name published in the article, and I found the man. Yes, the article in the Daily Circus, I think you said. I was a poor student with barely a penny to my name at the time. And the young lady put £5 in front of me. So you readily consented to having a waxwork of yourself made and gave permission for it to be put on display. I did. I should sell what little I had to sell, I concluded. Ah, oui, I remember now. I purchased something else from you that day. Oh. Did you? I can't say I remember. What was it, madam? His camera. Ah. Oh, yes, I made a point of taking it with me whenever I made an excursion into any cemetery. You took a camera with you, sir? To what end? To record details of the bodies I disinterred. I had no intention of ever visiting a graveyard again after that night, so I sold it. I see. But I still have it, monsieur. It is a part of the special exhibit in my House of Horrors. I am very meticulous about such details. It is the Tuspel's way. It would seem, then, that this is the very camera Mr. Drebber took with him to Lowgate Cemetery on the night in question. Yes, interesting. There it is. That's what we needed. I guess we're missing something in here. This article, you mean, published in the Daily Circus? Yes, somebody informed the dean that it was my name that appeared in the article. I curiously let that slip after night. I was digging up graves, hardly a model student, you might say. The university's reputation was execrably defiled, and I was expelled as a result. Mon Dieu, I had no idea. And having been running out of university, you found employment in a somewhat specialist trade. You combine your knowledge of science with knowledge of stage magic to create various experimental machines intended to demonstrate never-before-seen technology. Use those deceptive machines to trick the government and private investors into giving you money. Professor Albert Harebrained was just your latest victim, wasn't he? Whatever are you talking about? I have no recollection of doing anything of the sort.
Hold it!
Let me just press everything. By moonlighting, you mean grave robbing, do you? Okay, surely you need to look at the grave. My appearance to gauge the answer to that. The lantern and the spade. But who on earth would want to buy a dead body? Any major hospital. A hospital? In order to be better understand the human body, the study of anatomy is crucial to medical science. But there isn't a hospital in the world that has enough specimens to work with. Though obviously, they can't openly express an interest in obtaining more by dubious means. As aspiring scientists, we young research students had no money to work with, as I am sure you can imagine. So we made, whatever that says, surreptitious arrangements with the hospital via some of our medical student acquaintances. We would never take anything of value from the graves. This was all for the furtherance of science, you see. That's what we all told ourselves every time we stole into the graveyard at night, spade in hand. You realize body snatching is a serious crime. If you were caught, you could expect the gravest of consequences. We students were caught between the hammer and the anvil. We needed funds for research. Professor Harebrained said exactly the same thing. Quite speechless at the apparent levity with which you've revealed this aberrant behavior.
Hold it!
The strange happening at Lowgate Cemetery, which you now deny. Not entirely. I ran to fetch the police at the time, you know. I was shaking like a leaf. But they didn't believe a word of it. In fact, I was very nearly arrested myself. So you went to the papers instead? I started big with London News, but unsurprisingly, they didn't want to know either. In the end, though, it was reported from the gossip rags, the gutter press, that came to get my story. It spread like the plague through the capital as gossip-hungry Londoners lapped up the tale. The story was in every single paper at the time, with the exception of some broadsheets. And yet only 2 or 3 of them actually interviewed me personally. Most of the accounts turned out to be very interpretive ghost stories. What about the article in Daily Circus? That particular journalist found me at my dormitory. I don't know how, but he discovered my name. So recount him to exactly what had happened that night. And from your description, he drew this illustration? Precisely. That's how I learned that the condemned man was the infamous professor. But the reporter told me so. I had no idea myself, you see. Liar. Newspaper reporters are wont to snoop around in matters that don't concern them. So the scene portrayed in the illustration is accurate then? Well,
Objection!
wow. Get the fuck out of here, bro. Sorry, Mr. Drebber, but I don't believe that. Don't believe what? Your latest claim. You did see the professor on the night 10 years ago. Oh dear, we seem to be at odds, but I was there and you were not. I know what I didn't see. The illustration with this article was drawn based upon what you told the journalist that you witnessed. A figure emerging from a tomb wearing an iron mask. Yes, when the killer was tried 10 years ago, it was decided in the closed court rulings that the man would wear the mask to hide his identity. It wasn't to be removed even during his execution and subsequent burial. Not even the prison wardens were to see the man's face. But obviously, the provision of this mask was not public knowledge. So, Mr. Drebber, as you've just heard, a lowly student of the University of London certainly wouldn't have known about the condemned man's mask. So unless you actually seen the professor that night, it's inconceivable that the artist would have included the mask in that illustration. Well, Mr. Drebber? It's a vile scene, isn't it? If you look at it closely. And as I've already been at pains to point out, I was utterly petrified. Which is why I had it in my head that I'd seen a blood-curdling sight. But afterwards, I came to my senses and realized that I'd been mistaken. You're still saying you didn't see it? If you're stubbornly sticking to that story, witness, then amend your testimony to explain exactly how you think your eyes deceived you. Of course. Only happy to oblige. I can't believe he's still not going to concede the point. Fucking asshole. Alright, this is where we use the camera then.
Hold it!
A fellow grave robber? What are you talking about? Well, I wasn't the only one busy in the cemetery that night, you know. Other body snatchers were at work. Of course, when I saw one emerging from the hole he dug, my heart very nearly stopped. With Edgeworth, exactly. With that, it was the guy who kidnapped Maya, right? So that's the terrifying sight I actually saw, you see. You're claiming it was just another student on equally insalubrious business? Many of my medical students would wear metal masks to protect them from bacteria during dissections. Clearly the fellow was using such a mask to protect his anonymity, wouldn't you say?
Objection!
That's a fucking lie. But there's more to the story, isn't there? The article goes on to say, in the next second, a gunshot rang out suddenly from behind. The bullet pierced the resurrected man's chest, who breathed and then stilled once more. We might assume that this sexton discovered the miscreants at work, perhaps, and fired upon one of them? If a gravedigger had shot someone in the cemetery, I think it might have been rather big news, my lord. Ah, yes, well, I can only assume it was an embellishment bolted on later by the reporter.
Excuse me!
Madam Tussbills, don't take it out on Mr. Schultz. Oh, pardon? I was lost in my thoughts. Would it be fair to say that Mr. Drebber's last remark was significant to you in some way? I thought it was a little strange, that is. How Monsieur Drebber could claim this now? If you don't mind me saying, madam, what are you talking about? Well, when I met you 10 years ago at your university dormitory, you recounted me about your adventures in the cemetery, none? Including the gunshot. Stop. You might want to watch your tongue, you know.
Objection!
Have a care, Drebber. That's no way to speak to a lady. Please, Madam Tussbills, carry on. Of course. According to what Monsieur Drebber told me at the time, he did hear a gunshot from behind him and the bullet hit the condemned man. I said nothing of the sort. None. You were very explicit about the details. About the mask that the figure was wearing. And the blood that spattered over you when he was shot. Enough! Shut up, woman! You're making all this up! That will do! Mr. Drebber. Yes? You refute the account just given by Madame Tusples. I have no recollection of ever saying those things. Come on, do you really expect us to believe you? Control yourself, counsel. I will not permit baseless accusations in my courtroom. Right. Under the circumstances, I think it's best that you supplement your testimony with a statement to clarify your position on this witness. Very well. And we got him, bro. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him. Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Objection!
Mr. Drebler, do you remember this camera? But that is the camera from that fateful night. Yes, we borrowed it from the House of Horrors. It's the camera you took with you to the cemetery that night, Mr. Drebber. And? Is that supposed to be significant? This kind of camera is really seen in our homeland. My colleague and I were keen to examine it closely. We noticed that the lens extends forward on the end of some bellows. Like this.
Hold it!
What's that? There, just on the bellows. It looks like a dark red stain. Ah, that's right. It's a rather conspicuous mark here on the bellows, in fact. Good lord, are you suggesting... Yes, my lord. It would appear to be a spatter of blood. Something that could be confirmed with a simple chemical test. Isn't that right, Dr. Scythe? It would be difficult to determine if it was human blood, not the blood of some animal. Oh, get the fuck out of here, bro. But yes, to test whether or not it's blood at all is simple enough. I propose that Madame Tusple's testimony was correct. And on the night in question 10 years ago, you were spattered with blood from the gunshot wound. Well, And that furthermore, you really did witness the condemned professor emerging from his tomb. There's simply no way you could have forgotten such a traumatic experience. In other words, the only explanation is that you're trying to hide the fact that you saw the professor that night.
Objection!
But why? Why would he want to do that? Well, not for his own gain, it would seem. For whose then? Who could benefit? Mr. Drebber's obviously lying in order to protect somebody. My goodness, he's shielding someone? Yes, my lord, and clearly. As someone who doesn't want the truth about the professor coming back to life to be exposed. Well, counsel, who is it then? Who is this witness trying to protect by lying about what he saw that night?
Take that!
The obvious answer is Dr. Scythe. Scythe? Whatever do you mean? Imagine if the convict who had been sentenced to death was not in fact killed. Imagine if that was to come to light. What are you insinuating? And imagine the convict in question was the country's most hated mass murderer. If it was the professor. That would be unprecedented scandal.
Objection!
This is beyond a joke, need I point out, that the dead cannot come back to life. What are you suggesting would mean? That the execution never actually happened? Yes, that's exactly what I would mean.
Objection!
Once a man is sent to the gallows, he hangs. No one could escape, not in Great Britain.
Objection!
But the fact is, there was a witness to the fact that the man did escape his hanging. If that were really true, counsel, the implications of misconduct would not stop at supervising coroner. It would take the honor of the entire judiciary from the ground up. Opening Pandora's box. And it's exactly because of those monumental repercussions that Dr. Scythe would consent to any demand made of her by someone who threatened to expose the secret, even if that meant being complicit in a crime. You mean... I mean that Dr. Scythe was collaborating in Mr. Drebber's wicked scheme. She was corsaired into collaborating in order to protect her decade-old secret. She switched the dead body of Mr. Asman with the waxwork model and fabricated the autopsy report. Oh, the leg. We haven't seen the leg in a while. Lord Van Zykes? Pray forgive my freshly filled hollow chalice. And a whole raft of other discourtesies now. Goodness me! It's just the sort of tall-taled Londoners would enjoy, I grant you. An executed killer rising from the dead. Scotland Yard cover-up. A conspiracy at the highest levels. So let me ask you one thing. What's that? Coerced. My bad. If the condemned man really did emerge from his tomb that night only to be shot in the chest, who pulled the trigger? And dispose of him forever? Well, I have no idea at the moment. We have too little information to work out that at present, I think. I couldn't agree more. The Old Bailey is no place for wild fantasies. Ugh. And you have considered this, my Lord Nimon's friend. And have you considered this? Considered what? Do you realize just what a dangerous endeavor it would be to coerce this woman into such criminal activity? The leg and tossing bottle are my favorite animations in almost any game. I like Van Zykes a lot. Quite hard to imagine any sum of money being offered for research could warrant it. To rely on some stage deception when so much is at stake would be madness. Well, I suppose. And this was no petty crime either. The victim was murdered. A man who'd already invested money in the venture and would be instrumental in future profits, too. Yes, I had no reason to kill Mr. Asman at all. Stop! I could... Or you're forgetting that his death results in me receiving not a single penny. The court is already aware of that contract between myself and the victim, no? This is the contract. That's very true. The motive for the case runs deep, though. I can feel it. Using threats to force the head of forensic investigation team to cooperate is extreme. Especially for a government grant he had no guarantee of receiving in the first place. If the research grant was the aim, taking Mr. Asman's life would have made no sense anyway. Which means, Mr. Drebber's motive wasn't money at all. He was just trying to kill Mr. Asman. But why? What was his motive then? Your time is up, my Lord Nipon's friend. I'd say you have got one last chance before the jury loses their patience with this charade. Let's see if you can back up your heady proposal, shall we? How do you explain why this engineer would throw all caution to the wind and threaten his own country? At this point, I'm not prepared to listen to more of this outlandish conjecture without proof. So, counsel, present your evidence. Alright, who exactly was Mr. Asman to Drebber? There's a connection there that no one's seen yet. And I'm going to have to present 2 pieces of evidence to show what it is. It's the contract and the paper, just for both his signatures. The evidence that establishes a motive and explains why the witness wanted the victim dead is right here. The illustration, who was made by Asman, and then it's going to make me show the contract.
Take that!
It's this newspaper article, my lord. That was written 10 years ago? And every detail has been examined already. What can it possibly tell us? That drivel should never have been written. Typical gutter press nonsense that means nothing. Yes, on its own, it isn't particularly significant. However, when considered alongside another piece of evidence, it will completely explain your motive for wanting Mr. Asman dead. What other evidence? Counsel, you will present your supplementary evidence without delay. The evidence which, when cross-referenced with the newspaper article, establishes a motive for the deed.
Take that!
It's this contract, my lord. Mr. Drebber, this is the contract you signed with Mr. Asman. Yes, that's right. The very document, in fact. That proves I had no reason to kill the man. No, I'm afraid not. What? There's something very significant that this newspaper article and the contract have in common. Really? And it's that common link that shows very clearly why you were determined to kill Mr. Odie Osmond. It seems the defense has uncovered something the rest of us have missed. So, my learned friend, point out what these two pieces of evidence have in common. Okay. Shaboink.
Take that!
What these two pieces of evidence have in common is a signature. A signature? The signature on the illustration that accompanies the 10-year-old article and the signature on the contract belong to the same person. What? As the court has heard, this illustration was drawn 10 years ago by the newspaper reporter who found Mr. Drebber and interviewed him about his ordeal. If you look closely, the reporter's signature can be seen in the bottom right corner of the drawing. And if you look at the contract here, which was signed between the witness and the victim last year, you can clearly see Mr. Asmer's signature at the bottom. Let me see now. Good Lord, yes, they're identical. In short, the journalist who drew the illustration and wrote the article published about Mr. Drebber 10 years ago was the victim of this case, Mr. Odie Osmond.
Objection!
But explain to the court why. Why would that constitute a motive for the witness to murder Asmond? Well, if you think back, you'll remember that Mr. Drebber talked about that article in his testimony. Grave robbing, you say? Yes, exhuming fresh corpses? Okay, we already read all this. I gotta save my voice. Because of that newspaper article. At the time, you were a student of the University of London who dreamt of becoming a scientist. However, this single newspaper article changed your entire life. So Mr. Asmond used to be a newspaper journalist, did he? He did, my lord. In fact, it's widely held belief that Asmond managed to position himself at the heart of his criminal network, thanks to many dubious connections he made during his time as a reporter. So you had to give up on your dream and leave university. You lost everything. Eventually, you found yourself working in the field of science, but only in the shadows. Not because of that article. Written by Mr. Asmond. Enough! Ooh. He's mad. Stop this endless drivel about my life. What? Explain yourself, Mr. Drebber. Yes, it's true. I believe the university as a result of the article. But it was just the straw that broke the camel's back. What do you mean? Almost every student of science in the faculty, too, was too poor to actually conduct any research. But they struggled on with their hypothesis anyways. We all did. Only to have them taken by vultures. Sooner or later, you knew your ideas would be stolen and patented by some wretch or other, after all. Making a name for yourself as a scientist in a climate like that is a miracle only a select few geniuses could ever hope to achieve. Personally, I wasn't one of those geniuses, and so I was hardly a wrench. Being forced out of the university because of Logate was the best thing that could have happened to me.
Objection!
Mr. Drebber, do you genuinely believe that? Of course I do. Who's better placed to know whether or not I possess a talent for science than me? I'm sorry to say that your words don't ring true at all. How dare you? I have evidence to prove it. How are you in a position to say anything about me? I don't know you from Adam. Fine. If you think you have evidence, go ahead. Show it. What could you possibly have to disprove the idea that I was happy to leave the university because I lack talent?
Take that!
Do you remember this, Mr. Drebber? We found it at your workshop. Is that a Royal Society trophy for excellence in science? What exactly is this trophy, Counsel? It's the greatest honor that can be bestowed on a young scientist, my lord. There's no higher accolade. It recognizes emerging talent and promises a bright future. Good gracious! Your prospects for the future were excellent, weren't they, Mr. Drebber? Because even then, you were a genius in your field. But you lost everything. You had no future. Your talents would go to waste. And as a result of this one newspaper article. I don't know when you realized who Mr. Asmund was. But when it dawned on you that he was the same journalist who 10 years ago ruined your life, it's abundantly clear that you had no intention of forgiving the man. He's about to go crazy. Oh. Finally, he's going to fold. He's not going to fold. He's not folding. Oh. Fine. Clearly this has run its course now. What? I admit it. All of it. What? What are you doing? It's exactly as the Japanese man said. I was coerced into going along with this man's plot to murder the victim. On the condition that he kept my dirty secret from 10 years ago. No. Good lord! Oh shit. You realize what you're saying, woman? It's all true. That day. When I arrived at the Crystal Tower and saw the bird cage, my heart nearly stopped beating. That memory from a decade ago that I had done my best to bury deep inside myself. It was the professor again, staring at me in the face. And then, before I had a chance to react, I noticed something else. There was a note tucked inside the model's jacket. Dr. Scythe, you will go along with my plan. For someone who knows the truth about what really happened that night, 10 years ago. All my instructions were in the note. Every detail was meticulously written out. I had no choice but to do what it said. I made the necessary alterations to the scene and fabricated the autopsy report as instructed. There was really no other choice. It had to be done to protect the judiciary. I can only apologize now. Something crazy about to happen. Why on earth would you buckle now? Well, there's no point trying to hide it anymore, is there? No one done anything to stop it coming out, even collaborate in a murder. Its great lie about that execution 10 years ago has been exposed. But then it's still not clear where the victim got the stab wound. It's not a stab wound, Jiro, it's the gunshot. So then, Mr. Drebber, what do you say to that? Goblins has admitted everything. Surely it goes without saying. You admit your part in it too, then? I admit nothing. At all. What? Have you forgotten that the Kinesis machine was ripped to shreds by an explosion? Short of me admitting to a crime. There's really no possible way for you to prove I did anything wrong. Whatever this man says, I admit everything. He threatened to expose my secret, so I went along with his plan. And Lord Van Zykes. Yes? I hope you'll accept my apologies. What happens next is in your hands, of course. I have heard more than enough now. I hereby present the final findings of this court. This trial is not the proper form in which to pursue the alleged wrongdoings of Mr. Drebber. The defendant is Professor Albert Harebrain. Very true. It had slipped my mind. Isn't he one of your closest friends? As the court has heard, Dr. Scythe has admitted to allegations brought by the defense, thereby absolving the defendant of any possible guilt. You mean... At the present time, it is the conclusion of this court that the defendant was not involved in any wrongdoing. Does the prosecution have any objection? None, my lord. Let's go! Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo! You're proving Mr. Harebrain's innocence. But the thing is, now they're just going to sweep everything else under the rug, though. So, yeah, they proved he was innocent, but they're not going to... Everything else is going under the rug. Without further ado, then, the adjudication. Unless the prosecution and defense have any other matters to discuss. I don't know. This doesn't feel quite right. Why did Dr. Scythe suddenly admit to it like that? Everything alright, Mr. Naruhodo? Like you said before, the way the trial is set to end now, which will certainly deliver a verdict of not guilty. But is that really what we want? What the defense should be pushing for now is the truth.
Objection!
The defense objects to the trial ending at this time. I beg your pardon? We demand one final testimony. What? This is the Pandora's box, bro. You do realize I'm about to advocate in favor of your client, I presume. What are you playing at now, my Nippons friend? Why would you want to obstruct the conclusion of the trial at this point? No defense lawyer in his right mind would do that. Mr. Naruhodo, what exactly are you thinking? The truth, the whole truth, in a way to bring it all out in the open. Right? This is what Sholmes was talking about. Yes, in hindsight. Yep. One word of warning before I go. If in the course of the trial this afternoon you perceive even a shadow of doubt about the truth, don't let it out of your sight. Pursue it like a dog with a bone. To the bitter end, you understand? Do not falter, whatever may come to pass. W. Alright, I'm gonna go play more Homefront. Enjoy, bro. He must have deduced that this would happen. Yes, I'm here in court to advocate for my client and to secure an acquittal. Obviously. But that's not all. I believe that I have a duty to the court to pursue the whole truth of the case until every last detail is laid bare. And that is why the defense called for further testimony from Dr. Scythe. Testimony from me? About what? About what happened 10 years ago. Oh, never mind. In case it escaped your attention, I've already admitted to everything I did. The whole truth has already been revealed. So stop wasting everyone's time. As his lordship made very plain, your client will get the acquittal you wanted for him. There's simply no point protracting this business further with another tedious cross-examination.
Objection!
Oh, here we go. Yeah, throw the bottle. It's time, bro. Pray forgive my careless handling of the hollow bottle. I slipped. That's what you call it? What is your objection, Lord Van Zykes? Prosecution also calls for supplementary testimony from the witness. Don't be stupid. If there is more to this case than has yet to come to light, I will join my learned friend in pursuing the facts until the bitter end. Let's go! Van Zykes! Van Zykes! You a what? Lord Van Zykes. This is most irregular to say the least. However, as the prosecution also calls for it, I will uphold the request. Dr. Scythe, you will testify for the court. Explain the full extent of your involvement in the murder apparently committed by Mr. Drebber. Very well. It all began at the scene when I saw the waxwork and the note tucked inside its jacket. The actual body of the victim, as indicated in the note's instructions, was beneath the experimentation stage. The body had to be arranged in a certain way to implicate the defendant, which was my job. I enlisted to help the entire forensic investigation team to dress the scene appropriately. The truth about the execution 10 years ago is also a state secret of the highest level. I had to protect it. So I was right. The stage and the machine were all specifically designed for the deception. So it seems. They're all meticulously prepared. You did well to see through it. You're a very shrewd boy. So kind of you to say. But what's this autopsy report then? All I did was record the location of the body as being in the Crystal Tower instead of under the stage. That's all? What a terrible corruption. Only my team were aware of the deceit, and then only under my explicit instructions. Nobody else at Scotland Yard knew anything about it, I assure you. Must be thankful for small mercies, I suppose. Well, I believe that testimony has clarified everything. No particular need for a cross-examination, I would say. No, I disagree. I can't shake the feeling that something's wrong. Just look at the expression on Dr. Sykes' face. It's the defense's right to cross-examine any witness following testimony. What is it about you Japanese that makes you also doggedly persistent? Very well, if you so desire, counsel, proceed with the cross-examination. Yes, my lord.
Hold it!
From what you described before, it sounds like the note was anonymous. Do you have any idea who was behind it? Very few people know about what really happened 10 years ago to start with. But anyway, I never heard of this engineer. So no, I had no idea. Yet despite not knowing who was behind the plan, you went along with it? I had no choice. Protecting the professor's secret was my only concern. The horse is bolted now, and the stable door will never shut again. Scotland Yard's reputation will immeasurably be damaged as a result of all this. Yes, thank you, Lord Van Zykes. I'm well aware of that.
Hold it!
So you knew about the special construction of the stage used to carry out the trick then? It's quite obvious what happened with the victim in the waxwork. And you switched the two over, didn't you? In other words, you recorded the victim's body as having been discovered in the Crystal Tower in the waxwork. Arrested and sent it by carriage to be specifically addressed at the specified time. Why are you given such directions? Presumably so it can be recovered by Dr. Drebber and returned to Madame Tuspel's. I see. And then you put the birdcage back on the experimentation stage. Yes. Although someone obviously made a mistake about which cage should go where. I thought I made it perfectly clear to the team, but still. I suppose you were focused on the victim's body, that being a more important detail.
Hold it!
When you say arranged, I presume you mean with this. Yes, the instructions in the engineer's notes said something along the lines of fabricate some evidence to make it clear that that hairbrain alone could have killed Asmund. So you mean that was your doing? I fetched Hairbrain's ridiculous screwdriver from the stage and took it with me, alone, to the abyss under the stage where the birdcage had fallen. Alone, Doctor? I didn't feel it would be appropriate to involve anybody else in that particular part of the deception. She's stabbed. There was a void under the stage where I found the birdcage lying in the dirt. So this is where your stabbing came in. I approached it, leaned down, and slowly opened it up. Then I took the screwdriver in both hands and plunged it into the man's chest. And then you know that in your fake autopsy. So that might have actually killed him. Rather than the fall, that might have actually killed him. And then you know that in your fake autopsy report. As a fictitious cause of death. Exactly. So the actual cause of death was you killed him. The trauma resulting from the 30-foot drop. That's a lie! That's definitely a lie. My word. What is it, Mr. Sada? Something about Dr. Scythe's last statement. It's playing on my mind, that's all. Yes, mine too. Dr. Scythe. There's really no need to shout. I can hear you perfectly well. My friend called for you to add what you just said to your formal testimony. Oh? Which part? What I wanted to supplement her testimony is what she did to the victim. Prosecution concurs. Fucking love Van Sykes, bro. That's why she wanted this gone so fast, because she's the one that killed him.
Hold it!
So it was you who stabbed Asmund with this. Yes. Far easier than dissection, I assure you. No precision required. What a welcome change. The victim died instantly from a snapped neck. All I did was carry out the instructions I've been given. And unflinchingly as ever, no doubt. Imagine you didn't bat an eyelid when you drove the weapon into his body. There was no need to bat my eyelids. What else did you do to twist the facts? Remind the court, why don't you? If you wish. Your entire team in perverting the course of justice? My team consists of very best investigators there are. I demand loyalty from all members. We operate on a code of chivalry of sorts. You aid and abet murder, commit perjury, and dare you talk chivalry? If it was a matter of priorities. What? Nothing was more important than protecting the secret of the professor. My team did what was necessary without losing sight of the primary goal, and consider their conduct exemplary. Oh. I need a lawyer. I don't think this is gonna do anything. And your precious secret is out now anyway. Yes, as you say. And I take full responsibility. Blow me down, Dr. Scythe! Surely there was no other way you could protect the secret. No, there really wasn't. I've done my utmost, believe me. In many ways, I respect your determination. Whew! Nearly froze into that cold stare as she said that. Okay, come on. Blow me down!
Hold it!
Oh, come on. Yeah, we got this part. What does the other one say? The actual cause of death was the neck trauma as Asmund suffered from a 30-foot fall.
Hold it!
Where's the other one? I don't know. Boom. There's nothing wrong how? I can't inspect the photo. It's just I stood over the victim's corpse where it lay in the top of a cage and plunged the screwdriver into the chest.
Objection!
Okay, so it was the other one. I've got a nasty feeling that this inconsistency points to an extremely uncomfortable truth. Oh, what is this song? What on earth is this matter, Counsel? Have you lost your tongue? I apologize, my lord. Dr. Scythe, in that last statement of yours, there's just one point that seems to defy explanation. Out with it, my learned friend. There's an obvious inconsistency. There's an obvious inconsistency between your description and this photograph, which shows the victim in the birdcage following the events led to his death.
Objection!
The court has already examined that photograph in depth. There's nothing new we can learn from it.
Objection!
Yes, we have already considered it. That's true. But we now know the facts to be different. What do you mean? I believe we should let the defense explain. Where in this photograph will we see the alleged inconsistency with the witness's statement? So it's not the glass.
Take that!
Look closely at the bloodstain on the victim's chest. It clearly extends in a downwards direction towards the man's feet. And why is that significant, Counsel? If the victim was stabbed moments before the kinesis machine was set in motion, that's entirely expected. Ah, of course, no. That's not what happened. Exactly, my lord. Dr. Sykes made it very clear in her testimony just now. At the point at which she stole Professor Hairbrain's screwdriver and stabbed the victim was after the grand deception was set in motion when the birdcage had fallen below the stage out of sight. From the shape of it, it's clear the birdcage would have fallen on its side after the 30-foot drop. And if the victim really had been stabbed whilst inside the birdcage in that position, the blood from the wound would have spread equally in all directions. For all the former longitude appearance we see in this picture is inconceivable. Longitudinal. Given that the victim's blood seeped vertically downwards from the wound, it must be the case when you stabbed Mr. Asmund, who was standing up. In short, Dr. Scythe, your latest testimony was a total fabrication. Fucking love this song, bro. I knew it. I was right. Now I've identified that contradiction. There's only one way to explain the facts. We've all been under a great misapprehension here. What? What sort of misapprehension? Dr. Scythe. You claim you were coerced into helping Mr. Drebber as a result of the note he left in the waxwork. You claim that you made changes to the scene of the crime to implicate the defendant. You claim that you authored a fake autopsy report to cover your tracks. But one of those claims is an out-and-out lie, because the question of what the bloodstain really tells us has only one possible answer. If that is the case, what is it, man? Counsel, you've clearly struck upon a revelation. Now tell the court what it is. Which part of Dr. Scythe's story is shown to be a lie? By the conduct... There's something about her testimony, bro. Answer is very simple if you consider the sequence of events. If, when the victim was stabbed, the blood from the wound seeped downwards as it did, we can be sure the victim must have been either sitting or standing upright at the time. But as you rightly pointed out, the birdcage would have fallen on its side when it fell beneath the stage. Yes, it would, which tells us that the victim must have been in that position of his own accord.
Objection!
That's impossible. The man was dead, remember? No, that is the misapprehension. When the birdcage fell from the stage into the void below, it must have hit the ground with a considerable force. But he got up. Yeah, he got up. But Mr. Asman didn't die in the fall. Probably lost consciousness for a while. But when he came around, he got to his feet to climb out of the cage. Just as Dr. Scythe appeared. And the victim was in fact alive at the point in time. It changes everything. Ah. So Drebber didn't kill him. It was her. Mr. Audie Asman's killer wasn't the defendant, Professor Albert Harebrain. Nor was it the mastermind behind the stage trickery, Mr. Enoch Drebber. It was you, Dr. Courtney Scythe. Can this possibly be true? Have you been taking me for a fool? It was you, was it? You killed him? You hoped that by admitting to being an accomplice in Mr. Drebber's scheme, the trial would end. Before you were accused of a far worse crime. Cold-blooded murder. Oh, do shut up. You're so desperate now, you're making all this up, as if I would do something like that.
Objection!
Ooh, come on, Susato. I assure you the defense is not desperate, Doctor. Mr. Naruto has established the facts using evidence and logic alone. Huh, logic? Don't make me laugh. Sadly, your logic has a gaping hole in it. What? What do you mean? I have thought it was obvious. A motive, boy. You're lacking a motive. What possible reason would I have to kill Mr. Asman? Asman was involved in a number of criminal activities, from coercion and to theft and to murder. But there was a known connection to Dr. Scythe there. No known connection. I'm rather relieved to say it does seem somewhat far-fetched. True. No obvious motive. But there's still something in the back of my mind. I feel sure I've seen something somewhere that hints at why a coroner might have done this. I might have tampered with the crime scene and concocted a fake report. But murdering someone for no reason is a very different story.
Objection!
No. When you question what possible reason you could have for wanting to kill Mr. Asman, something did come to mind. What? What was it, counsel? Enlighten the court at once. Yes, we saw it yesterday, didn't we? Something that seems strange, but we had no reason to suspect it at the time. There's a particular object that explains why Dr. Scythe would have wanted to kill Mr. Asman. Or rather, scalpels. Did you say scalpels? Ah! Jiro. The mask! It would appear that word has struck a chord, Doctor. You, come on, out with it. It was yesterday when we visited your laboratory. It's time for bed, Jiro. Look at this big, thick book here. Ah, it appears to be an accounting ledger. It's a record of the forensic investigation team's spending, I think. Oh, what is it? It's clear that, okay. Scalpels. 500 scalpels. $500 scalpels a month? At first, I wonder what on earth you could be using that many scalpels for. But actually, I realize now it's not the scalpels themselves that are significant. It's the money for them, disappearing every month for the department's accounts. Asmon's criminal organization relied heavy on extortion for its funding, tracing the money from the forensic investigation team's account to find out where it was going would be extremely straightforward. 10 years ago, when Mr. Asmon was still a journalist and wrote this article about Mr. Drebber, he may well have been stumbled upon information he was researching the story. Information relating to Dr. Scythe's darkest secret that he would use to rack money from her for the decade. Her darkest secret? Good lord, you mean... I don't know what happened on the night of that execution 10 years ago, but clearly the opportunity to rid yourself of that menace was too tempting to pass up. So in the end, you weren't coerced at all, were you? You did it entirely on your own free will. You stabbed Mr. Asmon in the heart with all your might. To silence the blackmailer who knew your dark secret forever. You'll never understand. None of you. But we've had to keep covered up all these long years. The assistant's just kind of sitting there. That's a W trial. As very little of the machine remains after it was ripped apart by the bomb. The truth of the case can never be properly established. Unless you speak out. And if you decide not to, it's very possible that Courtney Scythe will escape punishment for her crimes. Please, sir, own up to what you've done. And tell us the court about the truth of what actually happened. 10 years ago, you told the truth. And you were robbed of a bright and successful future as a result. I could certainly understand your bitterness and your consternation now, however. This is surely the chance you've been waiting for. To sever the hold that fate's had over you all these years. Super high voltage instantaneous kinesis? I mean, really? It's the addle-brained mock scientists that are the worst, you know. They don't recognize the fact they don't have talent. They can't even get that right. And so they end up chasing impossible dreams, having unbridled faith in their abilities. They go on and on about their wonderful hypotheses, and their stupid eyes shining like a little child's. They make me sick. I can't abide their foolishness. Careful, Mr. Drebber. I was particularly pleased with the kinesis machine. It made for quite a show, didn't it? So you admit it. You admit that it was nothing more than a sham made for the purpose of killing the victim? Yes, I admit it. I did it all in the name of revenge. Revenge for the future that Mr. Asmon's article had deprived you of 10 years earlier. The revenge you sought didn't stop at Asmon, did it? Which is where that very particular waxwork comes in. Yes, I see. The condemned convict you saw rising from the grave in Low Gate Cemetery 10 years ago. Your account of those events were all true. And obviously Scotland Yard couldn't afford to acknowledge what had happened. Even if it meant discrediting a bright young man and crushing any future career he might have had. So your plan required that you abduct that particular waxwork model in order to exact your revenge on Scotland Yard as well, or on Dr. Sight to be precise. It was a year ago. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Asmund turned up at my workshop. He didn't remember who I was, of course. He just wanted to employ my services as an engineer. As he happened to have paper with him, an article on the front page caught my eye. About the coroner who handled that bogus autopsy being appointed head of a new forensic team. When I learned that news, my cognitive processes started to devise the plan. What a horrid tale. He robbed me of my future, so I wanted to use the man's own wiles against him for revenge, and have that rotten Scotland Yard eating out of my hand at the same time. I wanted them all to suffer the same humiliation I'd had to suffer. I like this guy. I like this guy a lot, bro. W him. Your actions against those who ruined your future were justified as revenge, at least to yourself. Certainly, no one has the right to destroy another's prospects, especially for purely selfish gain. And yet, in carrying out your plan, you did exactly that to someone else, didn't you? Did I? Professor Harebrain's only crime was passion for his hypothesis, but he had no compunction about sacrificing his future to effect your revenge. You knew that he would be forever branded a failure and a fraud. W. Drebber, bro. Perhaps life treated you unfairly 10 years ago, and others' misconduct left your life in tatters. But remember this. Your own actions resulted in exactly the same thing for another perfectly innocent young man. Damn. Pandora's box. Now all of Scotland Yard's gone to shit. Lord Strongheart's gonna be on our ass, bro. GG's. Lord Van Zykes, what of Dr. Scythe? An immediate warrant for her arrest has been granted. She's been remanded in custody, my lord. Remanded, my bad. I presume she will face trial in the coming days along with Mr. Drebber. A most regrettable situation indeed. She's made great contribution to her profession over the years. It really is a hard truth to swallow. However, that is a topic for some future occasion. For now, Professor Harebrain? Oh, yes? It seems there was a great deal more to your experiment than you realized. However, I think we can assume now that all sordid details have been brought to light. This has been a very long and profound trial, but I'm pleased to say you are absolved of all guilt. This whole experience has taught me a very great but painful lesson. Me, this dedicated scientist, this devotee of natural philosophy, I've been selfish, self-centered, and above all, a fool. Professor, I've spent my life thinking of nothing but my research. Misguided, believing that I could do whatever I set my mind to despite my lack of talent. And the worst of it is, in the process, I've caused others pain and misery. Others who are far, far greater people than I. No, Professor. That's not true. What? Alright. Don't tar yourself with the same brush as Drebber. What happened was his doing and his alone. This outcome is his fate, not yours. You're not to blame in any way. Lord Van Zykes. In Darish with which he referred to you earlier, calling you a fool, talentless even? The man has no idea. To believe in yourself and work your fingers to the bone to realize your dreams, that's laudable, not laughable. No one has the right to deride another for such choices. Thank you, Barak. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, yes, my lord, it is this court's expectation that you find the defendant not guilty of the charge of which he stands accused. I presume there are no objections? None from me, my lord. Certainly not. This trial has really made me think, but this is the right decision. It's all been proven methodically and rigorously. I have no misgivings whatsoever. What's that? He's done, eh? It's all over? I don't know what's become of the yard these days. I don't recognize the place. Very well. In that case, I hereby pronounce the defendant not guilty. Yes! Eats corn lengthwise? No, I do not. Shut up, Joel. So what's up with the assistant? Is he just gonna keep his fucking thing on, bro? What's the point? Says the cop that was sleeping on the job. Yo, bro, come on. Court is adjourned. Bah. It's over. That was some trial. Professor, what a splendid outcome, isn't it? Oh, it is, it is. Congratulations, Professor Hairbrain. Mr. Naruhodo, Miss Usada, I am truly beside myself with gratitude. How can I ever thank you enough? I'm just glad it's all been cleared up, that you realize you were just caught up in a bad situation. Right now, you know, if I had the research grant money, I'd get the whole lot to you, every penny. Well, that's very kind, but I'm just a student, so. We don't need any financial reward. Your acquittal is more than enough. Oh dear. Oh, what could I do? Aha! How about this? A memento. The paper about my hypothesis is inside. Well, just as a memento then. Thank you. I've been wondering, Professor. What are you going to do now? Back to Germany. Oh my, yes. What am I going to do? My hypothesis is my great machine lie in ruins. But still, it's been too long since I was last in London, so perhaps I'll enjoy some sightseeing. I must explore the great exhibition whilst I'm here. See if new inspiration hits me. Oh yes, that's a wonderful idea. I can't allow that. Lord Van Zykes, what are you doing in here? He wants to protect him. That's why. I'm sorry you had to go through that, Albert. Well, if I'm honest, it was terrifying. You were like a great demon behind your bench there, snarling down your prey. Cheh! You're one of the few true friends I have. I couldn't leave it to anybody else to handle the prosecution or the defense. Hey, W! Sorry? Or the defense? Did I just hear that right? I always knew that you had my best interests at heart. Don't worry. Ah, how about you show me around while I'm here in town? It's been a long time since we left university. We have a lot to catch up on. Listen, Albert. In a few days, your acquittal will be made official. When that happens, you must head straight to Dover. I'll accompany you. What? From there, you'll cross the channel and make your way back to Germany. I've already purchased the tickets. But no, hold on a minute, Barack. What about the great exhibition? This is the chance of a lifetime for me. I want to look around. No sightseeing, Albert. Give up on the idea. Ugh. Sometimes it's hard to see any warmth in those eyes, Barack. Lord Van Zykes? What's all this about? A necessary precaution. Yes, I think I understand. You do? Well, Iris told me that when you met Lord Van Zykes at his office some days ago, he asked how Mr. Natsume was doing. Yes, that's right. I remember being surprised at the time and thinking it was nice of him to ask. The point is, Mr. Natsume is still alive and well. Even though it's been more than 6 months now since he stood trial with the Reaper as the prosecutor. Ah, you mean the Reaper's influence doesn't stretch overseas? Those in the Reaper's sights meet their ends days or sometimes months after their acquittal. That's the pattern up till now. But of course, we know that both Mr. Natsume and Gina were completely innocent. True. And perhaps that governs the Reaper's actions. The truly innocent are spared. I don't want to take any chances with a close personal friend. But, Barack... Like the mustached Nepons, this man should leave the country without delay. That's why. I'm packing him off to Germany at once. Right. Does your friend-shaped package get any say in it? Goodness, was this your intention all along then, Lord Van Zykes? In court, where people think of him as the Reaper, this man seems absolutely merciless, and yet... Sometimes I feel as though I don't understand him at all. It's time to go, Albert. Back to the prison for the time being. Ah, yes. All right. Well then, Mr. Naruhodo. Thank you so much for everything. Not at all, Professor. It was a pleasure getting to know you. Best wishes, Professor Hairbrain. Well, once the dust is settled, you must come and visit me in Germany. Anyway, goodbye for now. Bye, Albert. Now, my Nepon's friend. Oh, yes? I thought you gone too. We have matters to discuss. Can you spare me some time? You want to talk with me? I'll be waiting in the courtroom in 10 minutes. Well, that was strange. For some reason, I didn't get that sense of impending doom as he walked away this time. The enigma. Barack Van Zykes. What does he want to discuss, I wonder? The answer awaits in the courtroom, I suppose. Here goes then. Here we go. Got the apprentice as well. So, are you satisfied? You saved a guileless scientist from a great injustice. Yes, I think so. I'm relieved at least. That's the man's innocence could be proven. Anyway, I imagine you've been wondering where my animosity towards you Nepons comes from. Well, at first, I thought you just didn't like me. I imagine you saw me as a pretentious child from an unimportant land who had no business being here. But now, I think differently. You clearly know our ways. So I would guess that some specific incident led you to your thorough dislike of my race. Will you tell me what happened, please? The Professor. I thought I'd never hear that name in this courtroom again, to be honest. He took your brother's life. Clint. My brother was Clint Van Zykes. 16 years ago, when I was still just in my teens, he was already director of the prosecutions and a key member of the judiciary. I looked up to him. He was everything I aspired to be. Fucking Susato. He was involved in the establishment of justice systems in foreign countries as well. There was exchange programs between Britain and other nations then too, to share knowledge and ideas. As part of one of those programs, three judicial students came to Britain from your homeland, the Empire of Japan. Oh, if it was 16 years ago, then one of them could have been my father. Of course. I remember Dr. Mikotaba well. I had no idea. I was a minor at the time, training at the prosecutor's office. One day, Clint introduced me to the three visiting Nepons. So, you've actually met my father. He and his colleagues were polite and amicable. They were adept at their work at exacting in their standards. It was my first encounter with the Nippon spirit, and it made a very great impression upon me. But 6 years later, that's when it happened. The investigation was going nowhere. There were no suspects even, just an ever-growing list of victims. And in the end, my brother became one of them. The last, in fact, before the case was finally resolved. I'm so sorry, Lord Van Zykes. Truly. Clint was always ready to put his life on the line for justice anyway, so he wouldn't have wanted it any other way. He lost his life to the killer, but it was his victory in the end. For me personally, though, it was a great loss. I found myself in a very dark place indeed. I like Nepenthe better, so shut up. When I finally found out the killer's identity, the reason why no one had been able to catch the man sooner ceased to be such a mystery. He'd been hiding in plain sight all the time. Plain sight? Are you aware of the political events 10 years ago? It was a period of extremely sensitive diplomacy between the British and Japanese empires. A new treaty was being forced, I think. Correct. The Anglo-Japanese Treaty of Friendship and Navigation was being concluded. The leaders of both countries were deep in extensive political discussions. Which is why this particular killer's appearance in court was conducted as a closed trial. If the British public had known the identity of the killer, not only would the treaty have been in jeopardy, our two nations could very well have ended up at war. What? A war between British and Japan? That would mean, oh my. You mean to say that Professor was...
When the trial reached its
Oh
conclusion,
shit, thank God I
earlier,
got to talk.
I thought to myself, yes, it's time.
Oh shit. Ah!
Time for you to come face to face with this hideous monster. I borrowed the key for the mask from the proprietress of the Waxwork Museum. So see for yourselves now.
Who is it?
Confirm it with your own eyes. The truth that's been hidden this past decade.
That's the professor?
Yes, that's him.
Until now, the thought never even crossed my mind. That the mass murderer, whose crimes shook Britain as never before, was Japanese.
Wait a minute. That face. I feel as though I've seen it somewhere. It's strangely familiar.
Oh! What the fuck?
Father.
What?
What? Father?
Take out the mask, bruh. Yes. It's a Kazuma.
Kazuma!
Oh, wow! His father was the professor?
Kazuma Asogi. After a whole year, finally his
Wow!
memories returned.
Holy shit.
As he stood there before me. Ryunosuke.
Oh, wow. Wow. Don't cry, please. Oh, he's gonna cry, bro.
Hello again. My friend.
Kazuma-sama!
Judicial Assistant Mikotoba.
It's been a very long road. Thank you. Thank you for guiding my friend here when I could not.
It was an honor.
I knew you wouldn't die that easily. Kazuma.
Could cry, bro.
I owe you thanks, too, for taking good care of that in my absence.
Oh. Karuma. Great blade of the Asogi clan.
I like how this is a
Passed down
cutscene
through
too.
the
I could cry,
generations.
bro. I really could. Holy shit. Honestly,
When
bro.
we left
Nah,
Japan,
hold on. I gotta finish
This
this game.
sword was at my friend's side.
Don't
The Japanese
let
man's
me jump to
katana is his
conclusions.
soul, and he couldn't be parted from it. But then, when the incident happened, it was Susato-san's wish that I inherit the sword, and I've kept it with me ever since, along with my memories of the friendship we shared.
So was this his mission, to figure out who the professor was?
With this by my side, I always felt that you were watching over me somehow.
I've made it. At last.
Father. Are you saying... Surely not. You mean, you knew all this time? I'm looking at it, but I still can't believe it. This mass murderer is Kazuma's father.
Don't slice it. Whoa, 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 whoa. It's a wax. It's wax. Wait. No way he just cut the wax, bro.
Kazuma-sama.
Ryunosuke, we have much to talk about, but now is not the time. I'll be seeing you.
Are they gonna put us? Oh my god, they're gonna put us against Kazuma, bro. Oh my god, I can see it now.
That's all Kazuma said
Where's Van Zykes? Where'd he go?
before he turned and left us there in the courtroom.
Holy shit, that was good. So he's the living after image of the man who took my brother's life, is he? Yes, Kazuma Asogi, my best friend. 3 months ago, when Lord Strongheart introduced us, I had an inkling there was something there. Some connection. Why did Lord Strongheart do that? Why did he make Kazuma Lord Van Zyk's apprentice? And when he was suffering amnesia, too. The man was apprehended, even executed. But his legacy just won't die. That's the sad truth. Anyway, that's all I had to say. I thank you for meeting with me as I asked. "10 years ago, my grandmother took me to the railway station. We were there to meet my father from the train. For me. It was the first time I'd ever seen him. Poor Susato-san. All this tied up with the painful memories for her, too. So is he one of her father's accomplices? Well, not accomplices, but like friends that came to Japan 16 years ago? She's never talked about this with me before, though. Love how they just let you think for so long he died. I was gonna say, bro, because, like, I've been thinking the entire time, what a dumb way to die, bro. He called me into study one day. He told me that a great friend of his had passed away in London, and that friend had left behind a son, a boy 7 years my senior. Father told me the boy has made a promise to his late father, so he was studying to become a defense lawyer. I wanted to help, so I studied to become a qualified judicial assistant. As I'm sure you've worked out, that young man's name is Kazuma Asogi. So you see, that's how he and I met. Took him a full game.
For a brief moment, my great friend had returned, only to disappear again all too soon.
Well, at least we know he's alive. Whoa, what? Do you want him to die and then 2 cases later, oh, he's back?
But in
That
that
would've been fun.
fleeting encounter, something stirred. Something that had been dormant for a long time. As if great wheels had been set in motion. I could almost hear them creaking into life. In some ways, it was the end of a chapter, but in many, it was the start of a new one.
Whew. What a chapter, bro. But why would he make promise to a serial killer dad? Jiro, do you think he knew his dad was a serial killer? All he knew was that his dad died. It really does seem like they knew what they were doing with both games from the start. I think they knew that they were gonna do 2 games.